Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the podcast of Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene, talk, and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy accomplice, aka the authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
How are you doing, everyone?
And I am your host, last time one wannabe, the brains of pop culture. How's everyone doing tonight?
I am okay. Nothing of particular note has occurred in the last few days.
Yeah, honestly, it's to the point where I think I'm messing up my sleep schedule just because I'm so bored that I end up just getting tired.
I'm just glad it will be October before too long.
Yeah.
September has dragged for no goddamn good reason.
I gotta start, tomorrow, I gotta start putting up some decorations.
Yep. And next time we get groceries, I'll have to remember to ask my mom to get apple cider because it's cider season, goddammit.
I think I tried that once when I was young.
You've only had apple cider once?
Well, not once, but I think I tried it when I was younger. I didn't really like it.
And I will quietly murder you in the privacy of my own thoughts, and we will move on from that.
Hey, at least I tried it.
True.
So yeah.
For future reference, folks, my love for apple cider is almost on par with most people's love of pumpkin spice things. Like for me, apple cider is more the flavor of fall than pumpkin spice things. Anyway, moving on.
So for this week, we're gonna try and finish some things. Because we do have somewhat of a catalog build up of things. While also one thing Dalton did send me to cover this week. So to be honest, I'll be honest, I'm just excited for October, which is complete opposite of last year for some reason.
Yeah. Wake me up when September ends.
Yeah, so we're just gonna try and breeze through this stuff as quickly as possible, just because again, it's just it's the last day of the month, and
yeah, next week we will officially be on October 2nd. So yeah.
Right. Hello, Dragon Troll. Sorry, didn't say that earlier.
Hello, Dragon Turtle.
Yeah. So first one is one that we covered a bit ago, not too long ago, but the Ezra Miller accused of running a cult, grooming minors, and carrying guns article.
The many marvelous misadventures of one Ezra Miller.
Right. Okay.
Because apparently the guy thinks he's the bastard love child of Aleister Crowley and Rasputin if he were on estrogen treatments.
Right. Okay. So we're gonna start a little bit further back and move on. And just a set thing like what we've done with the rewind of the article. We're going to get back to that after October.
Yeah, everything that is normal is being saved for after Samhain season, basically. Because we love the spooky season around here.
Right. We're just gonna spend like about hour or so on this, just because knowing us, I have no doubt we can talk.
It could go on longer, but it shouldn't because we have other. And believe it or not, the thing that I insisted that we cover this week is even stupider than the many misfortunes of Ezra Miller. So I know what I said, but yes, the next article is even stupider than this one. So we have to move to it at some point.
Okay, Dragon Turtle, is he legitimately insane, or could some of this be fake / performance? I honestly
No, I think it's legitimate. I think he is part of it is that he was broken in the head to begin with, I think, and part of it is he found an ideology that makes all of the things he would want to do anyway morally permissible, i.e., social justice, and a organization, i.e., Hollywood, or the broader aristocracy in general, that encourages a lot of the things that in other contexts would seem insane, but in the context of social justice are no longer. Now, don't get me wrong. I am not therefore saying that um, gender dysphoria or any of the other um, particular beliefs he has are insane, but I am saying that they might be very appealing indeed to someone who was a few a few neurotransmitters shy of a functioning brain, like Ezra Miller. And I don't think that it helped in the same way that I don't think someone with megalomaniacal tendencies is helped by fundamentalist religion, whether it be Muslim or whether it be Christian or whether it be whatever. You know, you take someone who already has Machiavellian, manipulative, authoritarian tendencies, and you give them a moral reason why they're justified in doing those things, and it gets worse, so much worse. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, so we're gonna start a little bit back, just so like we have the context of where we stopped. So hopefully we don't like drag on with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another time, the young woman, I think it was the threesome thing, right?
There were like 3 significant women in this particular drama. The woman he choked, the young girl that he.
We already covered I think earlier when we first started this. So
Yeah, so I think this is the woman who he invited to live with him, and then she got spooked because she realized she was in a cult atmosphere.
right, okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Okay. So I'm just trying to. God, there's a lot here.
See, this is the problem with Ezra Miller. No individual story was really enough to make it worth covering because it was just actor does crazy things. But when you take it all together, it's a mountain of. It's essentially a death by 1,000 paper cut situation. No one thing is particularly noteworthy, but when you put them all together and remind yourself that this happened over the course of like 2 years, then it gets a bit of it gets significantly more alarming.
I don't know why, but when you said "Death by 1,000 Paper Cuts," my mind automatically went to that short film of the Spectre.
Oh yeah.
I really wish DC Showcase would come back. Oh no, I think it is, but it's like on those DVDs.
Yeah. You have to buy a DVD and go looking in like the bonus features to find the DC showcases now.
Yeah, that sucks.
Which is bullshit, but it's a different kind of bullshit than the bullshit we're supposed to be addressing.
Yeah,
So next.
sorry. Um, she said Miller exhibited again. I'm just reading more of this. I don't know if we really want to. This is stuff we've already covered. So, yeah, I probably should have made a playlist for this specifically. Now that I think about it.
I mean, I'm not sure it's gonna. It's not. I don't think it's gonna be as recurring an issue as rewriting Ripley, but who knows?
Right. Anyway.
That is still our freaking white whale.
Yeah. Anyway, she said Miller exhibited mood swings that left her tearful and confused. At one moment, they would look me in the eye and be like, "I love you," and be this really nice, beautiful person. She said, and the next minute, she continued, they would tell me that I was fucking disgusting. There was a lot of psychological abuse, the young woman said. Uh, Once the young woman mixed up the Spanish words for 6 and 7. Realizing her mistake, she laughed and leaned on Miller affectionately. She said Miller told her to get the fuck off me and called the error disgusting. The band man who witnessed the interaction said he was shocked at Miller's response.
And see, this is two things here. Number one, that is a textbook example of a symptom of borderline personality disorder. They call it labile moods or mood lability. It's not just mood swings. It's basically entire like psychological inversion. Um, and two, this is why I'm convinced he's a true believer in all this social justice crap, because I'm 90% sure that the reason why he found her disgusting after she made that mistake was, how dare you be so flippant in your mistaking things from other cultures, you evil, evil white person, you. I'm pretty sure he was justifying that in his own head by way of social justice rationale. So that
Ed Brewer.
yeah, hi Ed. Sorry, you caught us mid rant here.
Yeah.
Anyway, next.
Right. Okay. Another time the young woman said she was stretched. Yeah, I think this is where we stop. Um, Another time the young woman said she was stretching in a communal area when Miller approached and asked whether she was practicing yoga. The two began discussing yoga, then Miller started screaming. Ezra was like, "You don't know anything about yoga," she recalled. The hostile demon just took over. In both cases, the young woman said Miller made her feel ashamed for being white.
And again, borderline personality disorder plus social justice true believer equals this.
God, I've never, like, Jesus Christ.
Although, because I am that bitch and I will flex my expertise over people as and when they are dickheads. Ezra, I'm 90% sure you don't know anything about yoga that you couldn't have picked up from Wikipedia. I doubt you've read a single book on the subject, and I doubt you've ever actually used it for its practical purposes. So you can fuck off as well, you new age hipster fuck.
Right.
You emotionally unstable new age hipster fuck.
Right. The only thing I know about yoga is I don't want to do it.
I don't think you're flexible. I don't think you're particularly flexible enough to try more of the elaborate ones. In
No,
any case,
I am aware. Yeah, I have like a bad back and stuff, which is funny because I'm only 20, 22. About to be 23 actually pretty soon.
I might have to when we meet up, I might have to fix your back for you because I know a lot about like chakras and meridians and stuff. I'm very good at massaging for whatever reason.
Honestly, I think I have a good idea of how to fix it myself. One thing, fix my posture because I've slouched since I was a kid.
Yeah, slouching es no bueno.
Yeah. Also, I have like that the thing I told you about, that inverter thing.
Uh-huh.
So probably should use that too.
Yeah. But yeah, you should pay more attention to your back because I will speak as someone who has had joint pain and various different other kinds of like bone pain since he was a little kid. That is not something to fuck around with because it can get really, really annoying, especially when you get older. So fix it
Um,
now so you don't have to be be in crippling pain in your like 30s and 40s.
yeah, I don't think.
Anyway, back to dumping on Ezra Miller because he deserves it.
Okay, so giant turtle. Well, SJWs are known for taking mentally ill people and telling them it's exactly the world that is that is the problem. Like that woman who was afraid to leave her house and be around people told it is because men will kill her or something.
The question is it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. Do SJWs do that because they themselves know they have some sort of neuroatypicality, or do they do that because they believe standardization of mental health is some kind of oppression, or do they do that because the people in question can operate as human shields for them, or is it some combination of all of the above? My thinking is it's a little bit of all of the above. And that there's also the option of uh, people with mental illness find their way into social justice because it gives them the power to morally justify things that otherwise would be insane, and also because social justice as an ideology and a philosophy inherently lends itself to mental illness because it is fucking insane, as in logically incoherent. I'm not just wantonly diagnosing shit here. But then again, there's the other aspect of it's a moral framework, much like the aforementioned fundamentalist religion also is attractive to crazies. Um, sense. So if you can take something that's a vulnerability of yours and turn it into a superpower and turn it into moral authority, I'm sure that's entirely too attractive to you. It's why 90% of all serial killers have fucking manifestos because they have to justify their crazy beliefs in their own head, if nothing else.
Right. Part of me thinks maybe I should get a standing desk.
That would also maybe be helpful, although speaking of someone who can't spend a long time standing, I can't I can't actually suggest that to you because I know I couldn't handle a standing desk because I would get tired.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
In any case, you probably should at least find yourself a decent chiropractor at some point.
I have my reservations on that.
And that's understandable, but uh, finding yourself a decent chiropractor now,
Well, no,
finding yourself
what
a
I mean
decent
is,
bone doctor later.
what I mean is, like, the reservations are obviously just where to find good chiropractors, because most, if not a good majority of them, tend to be like kind of scammers or something. So,
Well, I mean, do what you do with any other important person and kind of shop around. If someone gives you the screwing with me vibes, then you get the fuck out of there and find another one. The good news for you is you live in a city, so you have options.
that's completely fair. Anyway, all right.
On with the madness of Ezra Miller.
Yeah. Okay. The young woman said that while at the hotel, she had. I hate reading this stuff, man. The young woman said that while at the hotel, she had sex with Miller 3 times and communicated sparsely with friends and family. The actor became fixated on her reading capabilities. What the absolute fucking hell?
I like if this were someone that I viewed as remotely sane, I wouldn't blink at that because it might just be a joke or it might be someone who's looking for a stable relationship because there are a lot of people, especially more traditionalistic, who view the entire point of marriage to be having children. So I would understand that. Given that it's Ezra frickin' Miller and he is the bastard love child of Aleister Crowley and Rasputin, both of whom were apparently on estrogen at the time, um, I I genuinely think he might genuinely be dehumanizing people, especially because that's very common among people with cluster B personality disorders like narcissism, borderline personality disorder, and histrionic personality disorder. And I'm not enough of a psychologist to diagnose which of these Ezra Miller has, especially because there's a lot of bleeding between them, and there are some psychologists who genuinely think that all of the cluster B personality disorders are just one singular personality disorder that manifests differently in different cases. And I'm kind of leaning towards that theory. But not in any case, I am absolutely certain he has at least one of these in my layman observation.
Like, that's gonna make you possibly facepalm. But that wasn't the end of the sentence.
Oh god.
Yeah. Yeah, let me start over. Yeah, let me just start over so we have like full context on what we said.
Okay.
Okay, this is
I was being poetic, Dragon Turtle. I was trying to I was trying to give an impression of the kinds of insanity Ezra Miller is displaying and the airs to which he is aspiring without. Basically, I'm saying that he's the off-brand twinkish version of two people who I actually have somewhat respect for, and that makes him even worse than both of those two people who are, while I have respect for both Aleister Crowley and Rasputin, they were a bit nuts, and if they didn't actually have the skills to back up their nutsness, um, that would be a different story. Ezra Miller's problem is he aspires to be like an Aleister Crowley or a Rasputin, but he doesn't actually have the skills or the
charisma.
academic nature necessary to actually pull it off.
Also, possibly the charisma.
Yeah, this is what happens when a hipster thinks he's the chosen one.
Right. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Okay. The actor became fixated on her reading capabilities, she said, and worshipped her perfect womb by talking to it, looking at it, hugging it, and laying the
Okay.
stomach. Okay, that was it. That was it. There you go.
Okay. Again, in a different context, this would just seem like very odd intimacy. Like I understand that behind closed doors people develop their own like mannerisms with each other. So it out of context, I wouldn't have any particular problem with this. I could see Gomez and Morticia Adams doing something similar, for example. But
No, that's an insult to them.
given that it's as Miller, and given that he doesn't have the class or education or skill set or even um, level of maturity of any of the above. That's again, this is what happens when a hipster thinks he's a badass. When a hipster thinks he's a badass, you get this level of cringe because he genuinely seems to think he's the second coming of fucking Charles Manson or somebody, but he doesn't even have the I take this at least semi seriously vibes of somebody like Charles Manson. Because for as much negative things as you can say about Charles Manson, and there are many volumes of things that could be said in a negative way about Charles Manson, at least he was someone you should take seriously. He was an insane evil fucker, but take he was a respectable evil, insane fucker.
Uh, that's going to be taken out of context, I'm sure.
I'm sure there are many things that I have said over the years that are going to get quote mined the second we experience enough fame for people to give a fuck. And that will probably make this show even better because it will result in them writing a bunch of hit piece articles about us, and we'll just wind up rebutting them on this show, and it'll make the show more popular. So yeah.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah. I mean, it's still fucking weird, honestly.
no, again, this is what happens when you try to be a fucking antichrist slash wizard slash prophet without any of the class or clout necessary to pull that shit off.
Yeah. Oh, okay. John Girl brings up an interesting thing. This sounds like a sort of "you will carry my child," and he/she will show up Christ himself sort of thing.
Yep,
Until
that appears to be roughly the ballpark of crazy we're operating with.
Okay. Anyway. Miller, she said, believed her loved ones were trying to hold her back and encouraged her to leave her life behind for a more prosperous future.
Um. Yeah. I'm just gonna. This is making me sound like I'm more medically viable than I should be. Because just to be clear, I am not and do not claim to be a medical professional of any description. However, I am a well-read enough layman and hopefully an intellectual enough layman to know that isolating someone and encouraging what's called defooing or de-family of origining um is classic cult leader behavior. And again, it occurs to me that the only thing that makes Ezra Miller not in jail right now is the fact that he is so non-threatening that no one took these outbursts seriously until they got to such an extreme that no one could ignore them anymore. I.e., he was behaving exactly like an Aleister Crowley, a Rasputin, or a Marilyn Manson, but instead of treating him like the creep he was, they saw him as a cheesy little eccentric gay kid and found his attempts to be more threatening endearing because he's too cute to be threatening. I think that's the only thing that's kept Ezra Miller out of jail or out of the hospital at this point is the fact that his feminine gay male tendencies are such that no one was able to take his outburst seriously as the threats they were, and they assumed he must be joking by default. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Da, da, da. She remembers thinking Miller was her ticket to success. I was like, all right, I'm going to Hollywood. Ezra was super manipulative. They kind of had us all under their finger, she said. They were able to twist and pull everything that I thought I knew about the world. After 6 days, Miller decided to return to Reykjavik.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually surprised I got that right on the first try.
Yes.
Although I'm sure because of my accent, it sounds. Because my accent to them wouldn't. It sounds.
Yeah, you're still speaking in an American accent, so it's gonna sound weird. But yeah, Reykjavik is about as close as we can get without the accent. It
Right,
would
okay.
be Reykjavik if we had to put more of the accent in. I'm sure my attempt to mimic their accent was just terrible because I didn't practice it beforehand. But yeah, that's about as close as we Americans can get. Have pity for us, for we do not know how we sound.
Right. Eager to get home, the young woman accepted a ride from the actor and their entourage. Okay, when she returned to her apartment, her roommate, who had heard the rumors about Miller and had grown worried when the woman stopped responding to texts, handed her a stack of literature about cults. The documents detailed how cult leaders promise spiritual awakenings or material goods to manipulate targets and how they isolate their followers by cutting them off from friends and family. And it recalled it was the exact same thing that I was in with Ezra, the said, and that really scared me.
good for her for realizing that, and I suppose jinx with regard to the article writer for spotting the same thing I did. I'm not sure if that makes me dumber or if it makes the writer smarter. I'm 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 tempted to say it makes the writer smarter, but that might just be me being egotistical little shit.
Okay, Dragon Troll. So he's like the Chihuahua. Chihuahua. Everyone laughs at until it takes someone's thumb.
And I'm just going to laugh at the irony of the fact that you, the Hispanic guy, didn't recognize the word Chihuahua.
It's not spelled like Chihuahua though.
Yeah, but it's also a foreign word. But anyway, yes, that's exactly the situation we're dealing with. If you took the behavior of your average Chihuahua and transplanted it into the body of a Doberman or a Tibetan Mastiff, we would be having a very different conversation. But because it's so cute, it's so harmless, it could never do anything wrong. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah,
And that's why I don't like little yappy dogs any more than I like big vicious ones, because it's like your your size doesn't change the fact that if you had your druthers, you would be murdering me right now. So no.
and I don't. I've never had a Chihuahua. Say one goddamn word, motherfucker. Say one
I
goddamn word.
I
You were thinking it. We all know.
I ole.
Right? Nah. If anything, I've always had mostly like pit bulls or yeah, no, most pit bulls, and maybe a mastiff or one too.
I
Like
mean
if I'm
there's
older enough, I might actually want to try and get a bulldog. I don't know. They look adorable.
that that doesn't that doesn't surprise me, and given your personality, that works for you actually. Anyway,
I used to actually be terrified of dogs when I was younger, for good reason. I was in an incident that involved dogs being attacking me.
yeah, he explained it to me once not so
We have
long ago.
explained it on stream before, like once, long time ago.
You may well have, but yeah, there was an incident that basically led him to having metal splits in his legs for
Staples,
several, yeah,
not
staples
uh,
for,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, he ended up having to get his like in the entirety of his legs stapled because of a dog attack once, and he was like 5 at the time. I don't blame him for not liking dogs after that. And
Six, 6 or 7 actually.
yeah, to be fair, also, I don't really like dogs very much because when I was young, about the same age actually, we had a golden retriever, and for those that don't know, when I'm at my own home, in the privacy of my own home, I don't often use my walker. I usually just crawl places because it's just easier and it takes a lot less energy than using the walker to walk everywhere. Because for those that don't know, one of the side effects of CP that of cerebral palsy that nobody talks about is it takes you twice the effort to do half the work. So for me, walking at a normal average pace is like running, and so on. So normally when I'm at home, I just crawl, and obviously when I was younger, that was even more the case. Um, so when I was young, we got a golden retriever, and I was on the floor because crawling, and the dog was just being playful, just wanting to, have fun and everything, but he was getting in my face and he ended up whacking me on the nose with his tail a few too many times. And then we ended up having to keep that dog outside for the rest of its lifespan because I I just couldn't deal with it being in the house. And to this day, I still don't really like dogs, mostly because they're too freaking hyper and they need to be in your face all the fucking time. Cats are much better for me because they are calmer and they still like to cuddle, but they also can do their own thing most of the time and not be right up in your face. Now, don't get me wrong, cats will be right up in your face, but they'll be right up in your face in a different way, i.e., they will see you doing a thing that is not paying attention to them, and they will sit right in the middle of whatever it is you're trying to do that isn't paying attention to them to insist that you pay. Like so many times I've been doing my homework and my cat's favorite game would be chasing the pencil across the table because it would see the pencil moving as I was trying to write down stuff on my homework, and it would decide it wanted to chase it. Or when I was using my laptop or the computer, the cats would just lay in the middle of the keyboard because they want the attention.
Right.
This is the thing. But it's still less annoying than the dog I need to be in your face and up your ass at all times approach. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Actually, well, I'm gonna read Dragonfield's comment that we'll move on. I do say big dogs are generally better. Don't really want anything smaller, let alone purse size, because so many are fragile, afraid, helpless, and aggressive. There are dog breeds that are more laid back and calm. You can also train dogs to just not behave themselves like that. But if
Yeah,
you,
we have a Basset Hound right now, and he only really has two modes, one of which is curious, the other of which is calm and chill. And he for some reason is drawn to me like a magnet, and I don't even know why because he's not even my dog, he's my brother's dog. But every time he sees me, he comes right to me and lays down. It's cute. But I'm not like I say, I'm not saying all dogs are like that. It's just one of the reasons why I will always and forever prefer cats to dogs is dogs in general have a lot less chill than cats.
I don't know. I mean, to be fair, I've had cats and dogs before, so I think I'm like I see the benefits of both and the cons of both.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've just grown because I've had a dog. I had a dog for the last 10 or so, well, a little less than 10 years.
I believe you still had her when we were doing the podcast because I remember several times we had to pause so you could take care of her, if I'm not misremembering.
Yeah. She yeah, no, it's just I don't know. I think I've just gotten so used to dogs that I kind of prefer them. I mean, like honestly, I would prefer to like get like a puppy and a kitten together so they grow up together. You know.
Mm-hmm. And now I'm remembering that my cat is still outside, and she's been outside for like 2 months. Um, and now I miss my kitty. And we're moving on so that I don't have to think about my missing cat anymore today.
Anyway, the woman said she was terrified of seeing Miller again, so much so that she fled her apartment until Miller left the country 10 days later. Her experience with Miller left lasting scars. It was only 6 days, but it honestly felt way longer, she said. I remember feeling like, wow, I don't know how I'm going to recover from this.
I can understand her trepidation. Cult behavior is not nice, especially when the would be cult leader in question is a narcissistic fuckwit, and double, especially when you didn't even know you were entering a cult atmosphere to begin with. So yeah, I can imagine she's fucked beyond all reason because of this. And the fact that Ezra Miller looks non-threatening is going to do another number on her because she's not because when you can train yourself to see who looks threatening, you can avoid those people. But when this kind of behavior happens as a result of someone who looks about as non-threatening as it's possible for a male human being to look, um, that's another issue because now you can't trust anyone ever because even the most non-threatening people you see might secretly be harboring narcissistic fuckwittery
Right.
behind their eyes.
Um, anyway, as Miller's behavior became more alarming, Iceland Dakota from Eyes was working through her first semester of college. Miller has flitted in and out of Dakota's life for years. They first met in 2016 when Dakota was 12. She and her parents, members of the Lakota Nation in North Dakota and South Dakota, were key figures in the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline, which was set to be built near the Standing Rock Reservation in North Dakota. The movement attracted progressive celebrities, including Miller, We traveled there with Shailene Woodley, their rumored girlfriend at the time.
Mm-hmm. And again, here we see Ezra Miller's new agey hipster desire to appropriate spirituality and tribal cultures. Also, she was 12, and he decided to make himself a mentor figure for her. Gulp.
Yeah, actually, they get into that.
Yeah. Anyway, moving forward.
Miller kept in touch with Dakota, promising to help her music career and sometimes stopping by her home out of the blue. Iron Eyes and Jumping Eagle said the family's. Yeah, Iron Eyes, Jumping Eagle. The family said they appreciated Miller's help with the pipeline and didn't notice any alarming behavior at first. We always thought Ezra's trying extra hard to be different, Jumping Eagle said, like quirky Ezra. But
and that's exactly why these sorts of people are dangerous, because they don't start with the I'm crazy as fuck. They start with the I'm really charming and interesting. And then only after you've let your guard down do you realize this person is crazy as fuck.
Okay. I'll answer that question later, Dragon Journal, just because I want to get through a little bit more of this. But that's a good one, and that's a good question. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
But over time, they said Miller's interest in their daughter intensified. In December 2017, Miller flew to Dakota, then 14, and a devoted Harry Potter fan, and other Standing Rock members to London to visit the set of Fantastic Beasts. Tribal court documents say. The documents said Miller, who was 25 at the time, attempted to sleep in the same bed as Dakota, but was stopped by a tribal member.
That's... How old was she at this point?
14.
Oh, gray areas there. I'm not touching that one with a 10-foot pole.
Right. Dakota's parents said they didn't learn about this incident until earlier this year. Dakota said it never happened. Okay.
That's
That's a bit concerning.
I'm refusing to comment because there's too many layers of I can't begin to weigh in on this.
Yeah. In January 2020, when Dakota was 16, she enrolled at Bard College at Simon's Rock, less than 2-hour drive from Miller's Vermont farm. She dropped out in December 2021 and asked a family friend, Chief Bear Cross, to let her stay at his home in South Dakota for a few days. When she arrived, the chief was surprised to find she had brought 4 other people, including a man in his 50s named Whitney Sutters, who was carrying firearms, and Miller.
That's not alarming at all or anything.
Actually, I mean, there is an image here of, I assume, those two.
Again, Ezra Miller, I think, is trying to be the next Marilyn Manson and completely sucking at it because he's too much of a effeminate twink to actually pull it off.
Right. Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
During the group's 4-day stay, Miller unexpectedly drew a gun, ranted about being followed by the FBI, and refused to let Dakota out of their sight.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Also, paranoia. Yet another symptom of narcissistic personality disorder. Because in the mind of a narcissist, everything revolves around me. Therefore, everyone must either worship the ground I walk on or be out to get me. And there can never be any in between.
There's a video by this YouTuber called Superfriend. I would recommend everyone check out their channel. It's really good. They're like big comic book fans, talk about like stuff, and even have done pitches for like Green Lantern movie, Flash movie. I think they're still working on their Justice League pitch. Either way, I would recommend it. But they did talk about like as Ezra Miller being like just a full blown narcissistic kind of piece of crap and all that, and a video that they made, which was a lead up to their pitch of a Flash movie, which was how to make a bad Flash movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, god damn.
If you die on me, I'm getting the necromancy.
Could you bring me back like a Frankenstein's monster thing? I don't know why. I think that me having those like stitch mark scars would be cool for me.
You realize, of course, I'd have to get the body parts from somewhere, but sure, if that's what you want.
No, I mean, you can technically still use my body, right?
I mean, yes, but the kind of the point of a Frankenstein's monster is like mixing together the body parts of the original person with other body parts.
Okay, that's fair.
And honestly,
you know a guy.
I no, but to bring back my best friend, I wouldn't be opposed to going grave robbing or murdering some people who could improve your
Just do grave robbing. Well, I'm cool with grave robbing. Okay.
Okay.
Also, thank you for saying bless you, Dragon Troll.
No, noted. It has been recorded that I am not allowed to murder someone to improve Brainstormer's body when he gets Frankenstein back to life.
To be fair, I would also prefer. I mean, I've taught you out of like doing the Dracula from Castlevania thing.
I know, but
Fine.
yeah, I mean to be fair, yes, I don't. I also don't have permission to raise an army of demons when Brainstormer dies.
Don't forget organ cloning and cybernetics. I don't think we have the money nor the expertise to do that.
No, neither of those things. Also, I don't even want to try and calculate how cybernetics would interfere with the magic. So just no.
Well, there is kind of the raises the question: if I come back in a Frankenstein body, am I still technically me?
I mean, if it's your brain and mostly your body, then yes, I would imagine. Also, the whole point of using magic for this is that I would make sure that it was still your soul. So if the brain, most of the body, and the soul are all you, then I would imagine the resulting creature would also be you.
Excuse me.
Although I would be smart enough to preserve your body parts in the interim of this, so that your brain didn't rot or anything. Because that's the main problem with Frankenstein's monster, is just that he didn't think to preserve any of these body parts before he Frankensteined them together.
Yeah. Something just came to mind. Just the thing I gotta probably do when I sign up, when I get a license or an ID. Mark myself down as an organ donor.
I mean, no, you are an altruistic motherfucker, so of course you're going to be an organ donor. That doesn't surprise me.
Okay, just remember to use the necromancy spells, not the necomancy spells. You don't need them. You don't need to bring them back as a cat boy.
You laugh, Dragon Turtle, but I recently did discover a Japanese grimoire that's specifically about summoning yokai. So Nekos might not be off the table anymore in terms of magical abilities. But anyway,
yeah, we got way off topic.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let me just reread that sentence because I did stop in the middle of it when I sneezed.
Mm-hmm.
During the group's 4-day stay, Miller unexpectedly drew a gun, ranting about being followed by the FBI, and refused to let Dakota out of their sight, said Bearcross and another member of the household who asked to remain anonymous. I mean, okay, this was in 2020, so I don't know how much of he technically could have been. I'm not saying he's justified for waving a gun around like an idiot, obviously.
Yeah, no, Ezra Miller. I I am not as much in favor of gun control as a lot of people, but Ezra Miller is exactly the kind of person who should not be having guns because
He's a
there's a lot of stories of him just randomly carrying around and also randomly waving around a gun for no good reason. There's even a story about this time he was playing Yahtzee with a couple of his friends, and he said something along the lines of Yahtzee was based on Rastafarian culture, and one of his friends, who also, by the way, happened to actually be black, um, just asked him where he heard that, and Ezra Miller assumed that he was trying to contradict him, pulled out a gun, and started waving it in his face.
what the seriously, this guy needs to be in a fucking mental institution.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. Okay. One cold night, the household member said she saw Miller having sex with Dakota on a bed outside.
And how old was this girl at this point?
Okay, so if it's still in 2020, no, wait. Yeah, 2020, she was 16. No, 2021, I don't know. So 16, 17. No, I guess it would be 17 because she signed up in January 2020, so that's when she was 16.
Okay. So
She dropped out in December 2021.
this is at the very least much less creepy than it otherwise would have been, because
I mean,
16 is actually the age of consent in pretty much everywhere in the civilized world but America. So I'm
but
and also that's usually when children start having sex. So I'm less weirded
actually,
out by him being with her when she's 16.
as a guy, as someone who, I mean, I'm 22, obviously. We're going to be 23 pretty soon.
Mhm.
So I guess technically I'm still relatively recent in terms of teenage years.
Mhm.
I can't tell you how many stories I heard around high school about kids getting caught in like the auditorium or places. Or God, I think there was one time I was in the lunch line and we walked past, like, there was a used condom on the floor.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah,
didn't.
I'm not surprised. I don't recall any rumors of people doing that in my high school, but then again, I also didn't get involved in all the social chicanery bullshit, so who
Uh,
knows?
but I mean, okay, it's still weird that, as described by the household member, it is on a cold night on a bed outside.
Yeah,
And this guy has known the girl since she was 12. So,
that this might actually literally qualify as grooming. Like, I really, really hate the overuse of the term grooming lately.
this does seem.
This is at the very least in the highly probable grooming territory. Also, why the fuck are you like? I understand, people like to spice it up and people like to do weird things in the bed. Like, I understand that people are weird when it comes to sex, but why is your bed outside for one, you multi-millionaire who can afford a frickin' mansion, and two, why would you be on said outside bed when it's cold?
All right. I'm gonna read a little more and then I'll address the comments you made. Control. Uh, it was dark, but there was a yard light. She said. Bearcross said the household member told him about this incident immediately after it happened. Dakota said, "Insider, this was so very false." Yeah,
I'm not sure she's. I don't want to be that guy and say, well, I'm not sure how reliable she is, but you've known this guy since you were 12. You're naturally predisposed to liking him, and he buys you a bunch of fancy shit and takes you to movie premieres. I'm not sure your word on this is entirely trustworthy, especially if you were having sex with him at this time.
Right.
Plus, but, plus, I'm not pulling a well. Your age means your opinion isn't that. I'm not doing that. What I'm saying is there are straight up fucking adults, grown ass adults who get rose colored glasses on when they're in the middle of a relationship. There are a lot of people who go through what's known as the honeymoon phase. And if that be the case with a normal girl and a normal guy, then I'm pretty damn sure it's likely in a situation where someone who you knew since you were 12, who also happens to be a freaking movie star, who you also might be having sex with. I'm pretty sure the honeymoon phase might also apply there. Because grown ass adults have to deal with the rush of endorphins and the honeymoon phase. So I'm pretty sure a 17-year-old and a freaking movie star would as well.
Right. Well.
Yeah.
The group left the reservation on New Year's Day, embarking on a road trip to Los Angeles. At his daughter's request, Iron Eyes went with them as far as Oakland. This is when I was able to see some of Ezra's deranged behavior. Iron Eyes said on the trip, he said Miller claimed they were an incarnation of Jesus Christ. Fuck you. I don't just say.
And there it is. We have gone full crazy cult leader, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, let me finish the sentence for that then.
Yeah.
Said Dakota was Miller's mother in a past life, and at one point brandished a gun in a state park. Dakota's
Again,
I'm sorry. Dakota's parents pointed out these incidents in the protection order as examples of violence and psychological manipulation.
Again, like I'm fine with the concept of open carry. Open carry is fine by me, but there's a difference between quietly or ordinarily organizationally open carrying and just I'm vaguely annoyed by something or I just want to fuck around, so I'm just gonna wave this gun over here and like it's literally something the Joker would do. But either the Joaquin Phoenix Joker or the Heath Ledger Joker or even arguably the Jack Nicholson Joker. But anyway, I'm just like the whole I am the reincarnation of Jesus Christ thing. Ezra, my dude, that is straight up textbook classic cult delusional behavior. And I am more charitable than a lot of people you will get on this side of the aisle because I'm an actual occultist with 16 years of experience. So I don't even doubt that you had some sort of spiritual experience that justified this in your head. But you're still fucking crazy. And if you had genuine spiritual experiences that put this in your head, there is such a thing as spiritual beings with the power to lie. Like you could have been taken in by a demon or hell, even just a particularly dick-headed angel, because there are a lot of angels, like pure white, white light angels that don't particularly like humans very much, and sometimes just dick around with them for reasons. So, like, even if you had genuine spiritual experiences that made you think this, you might have just gotten punked by a fucking angel doing a bit.
Okay. So I'm gonna. All right. Good. All right. Join control. Okay. So I'm gonna start off.
I mean that's also true, Dragon Turtle. I'm just saying that I'm not the strict materialist anti-theist that you normally get on the anti-SJW side of things. So I'm willing to at least nominally entertain the spiritual experience side of it. But even if it were genuine, there's a possibility that you got punked, because in most cultures it's well understood that sometimes the gods do just play jokes. Sometimes the gods can lie and so on.
Right.
So there's that. And there's also the possibility that, as you say, given that he's delusional about the real world, his grasp on and also I want to point out that, and you can double check me on all parts of this article previous to this if you don't believe me. I've been saying since we started this article that his understanding of metaphysics or his understanding of the occult is like the lowest form of new age fluffy bunny bullshit. So I'm not even saying he's competent, but under the possibility that he might have some genuine experience to point to with regards to this, beings on the other side can still fuck with you. So it's not there's this thing in occult and or even neo-pagan circles called UPG, unverified personal gnosis, to differentiate between something you actually have research and or receipts to back up versus something that you are going basically just off of revealed wisdom or revelation for. And there's a reason why there is that distinction between verified personal gnosis, shared personal gnosis, and unverified personal gnosis. So at the very most, this is UPG. More likely, it's him half-assing his way into something he shouldn't have half-assed his way into with his new age hipster bullshit, and now he expects us to take him 100% seriously and also himself to take himself 100% seriously. In which case, I just want to say, this is exactly how you wind up with people who think they are the second coming, and why it is a very, very bad idea to think that you are the second coming of any fucking thing. Because even if you were the heroic figure you're thinking you are, heroic figures are a dime a dozen in the supernatural community. So there. Anyway, moving on.
Okay, so I'm just going to address the stuff Brian Troll was saying for like the last 10 minutes, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so at 8:51, if you ask me if you're too dangerous to wield a gun, you're too dangerous to be a free man and should be locked up somewhere.
Yeah, I wouldn't dispute you there.
Yeah, and that sounds like it qualifies referring to the stuff I had mentioned with Ezra Miller.
Between everything we've gone over already in this article and the famous Yahtzee incident, this person should be nowhere near anything you could even use as a weapon.
Yeah, the only thing, this is a weird thing. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make it a little light here because it does seem a bit dour.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I think Yahtzee, I think of the scene from Scary Movie 3, if anyone remembers that movie, where the guy sees that he's got Yahtzee, he jumps up, hits his head on a shelf, and falls back down unconscious.
Yeah. Yep. That seems like something Ezra Miller would get up to.
Yeah. Okay. At 8:53, at this point, I'm surprised people don't want us to raise the age of consent to 21 or something, or just make it illegal to have too much of an age difference. As hedonistic as people are nowadays, there are a lot of strict Puritans, and I'm not even counting on the right for that. Tons there.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are probably people who want the age of consent raised. Honestly, I think Europe has the right idea with regards to this. I think the age of consent should be 16 because, let's face it, no matter how much the puritanical parents don't want to hear it, most kids are at least thinking about having sex when they're 16.
Oh no, let's be honest, they were probably thinking about sex long before that. But
Well, yeah, and by 16, it's very common for people to lose their V cards and all.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm 27 and I'm still a freaking virgin, but not for fucking lack of trying, mind you. But that's not. I think the age of consent being 16 makes sense, and it acquiesces to human nature in a way that makes a hell of a lot more sense than I know you're obviously going to be thinking about it when you're 16, and I know you're actively going to try to do it when you're 16, but for morally puritanical reasons, I'm going to make you wait 2 years, and if you act like a teenager before those 2 years are up, then you're morally wrong for doing so, even though every other part of the civilized world is okay with you doing it at 16. So yeah, I would say lower it to 16 and have done with it so that the entire civilized world could be on the same page. But yeah, given the modern world, we might end up in a situation where the age of adulthood is basically 21. And then you'll get a set of people who point out that, well, the brain isn't technically done maturing until you're 25 or 27, so we should make that the age of consent.
Okay, I'm done.
At which point they can fuck themselves.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I want to get through these comments and then get through a little more of this so we can move on because
Yeah.
I hate this article so much.
Yep.
855, and he is both a powerful and trigger-happy person who could also have been using manipulation tactics against her, if not just threats.
I don't think threats is in his character. I'm more than willing to chalk it up to she was in the honeymoon phase and call it that. Now, granted, if it's revealed that he was threatening her, then fuck him all the more hard. But for the foreseeable future, I'm not going to impugn things on him that don't need to be impugned because he's already guilty of so many other things. I don't need to make up things that he didn't do because he's already done enough. The verified things we know he did are bad enough. We don't need to throw other things on top of it.
Right. You could argue bad trigger discipline is public engagement, like juggling knives or driving drunk, but I'd say this is more threats. I would say 858.
What was that last one?
You could argue bad trigger discipline is public endangerment. Oh, the pulling a gun out at the park thing.
Yeah. He has, and Dragon Turtle is going to get this reference, but he has worse trigger discipline than Rudolph. And
I feel like that's Dresden.
Yeah. But basically, while I do think you're going to fall in love with Karen Murphy as a character, she has a shelf life because one of the other characters is an idiot with no trigger discipline.
Wait, Rudolph. Is he the fat old guy that doesn't believe in shit?
No, that's Carmichael, and Carmichael gets better over time. Rudolph is the sniveling little rat-faced dude who sees things right in front of him and still is in denial about them.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think I can speak for the entire Dresden fandom when I say we all hate Rudolph so much.
Right. Giant Troll, I don't care about spoilers, mainly because by the time I actually get there, because it's gonna take me a while to actually get it
Yeah,
right.
the thing I just told him will not become relevant until book 17. I think we're good.
Yeah.
He still hasn't made it. He still hasn't made it all the way through Stormfront.
I barely started it.
And therefore shame. But moving on.
I've been busy. Also, I am kind of lazy. I'm not gonna lie.
Hence the shame.
Okay. What about all the stuff I've sent you? Have you looked into that?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Moving on.
What about all the stuff I've sent you? Have you looked into that?
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So, all right, 9:30. So 20 more minutes, and then we'll call it.
Yeah.
Right. Later that month, Miller returned to the Vermont farm with Tokata in tow. Again, if I say the name wrong, I am so sorry. Like I'm terrible with names unless I've
He
had it.
doesn't do well with names, no matter how white bread they are.
Yours doesn't. I mean, yours is aristocratic. To be fair,
Thank you for the compliment.
and I do mean your last name. Your first name, obviously, I have no trouble saying.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Right. On January 9th, Miller and their house guests called Takata's parents to tell them that Takata was incapacitated after having taken LSD 4 days. What the?
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, Ezra Miller. I just want to say, as an occultist with 16 years of experience, I completely disavow you entirely. You new age hipster fuck.
I'm sorry. It's just that's child endangerment, right? She's 16.
Yep, he gave psychedelics to a 16-year-old.
Oh my god.
And apparently enough of them that she's still incapacitated days later. Which that to me is the alarming thing because, I mean, dosages like giving someone half a mushroom or something, I wouldn't bat an eye at. But if he gave her enough mushrooms that she's incapacitated a day later, that's a lot. That's a lot of freaking psychedelics. Like that. That's enough. That's enough that it could literally drive someone insane. Proper dosage is important, folks.
Right. Iron Eyes and Jumping Eagle flew to Vermont the next day. When they arrived, they said Takata was out of it and incoherent, screaming so relentlessly that she lost her voice for several days. She had
Yeah.
bruises on her arms and left cheek, they said, and she didn't have her phone or ID.
Yep. That sounds like a very severe bad trip. Which again, most of the time, psilocybin wears off after 12 hours. If you're still out of it days later, then you took way too fucking much. Yeah,
Rarely.
yeah. That's why I chose to focus on the dosage level. Dragon Turtle. I don't really know which way to call it as far as the whole adulthood versus my childhood thing. I just know that psilocybin tends to wear off after like 12 hours. So if you're still on a bender of psilocybin days later, then someone gave you too fucking much.
Okay, that is completely fair, Dragon Troll. I will grant you that. Though I was speaking more legal means.
Yeah,
Because,
yeah. Like in terms of the de facto law, she's still underage, and therefore it would be under the auspices of child endangerment.
yeah.
But yeah, he basically poisoned her, and given the psychoactive nature of psychedelics and how they've been used in mind control experiments and gaslighting experiments before, it's literally psychological torture under some definitions. I mean, what is it? Not it's not Y2K. It's MK Ultra. That's the other thing. Where doctors under government authority literally gave random people psychedelics basically just to see what would happen and um to see if it would make them any more suggestible. And there have been studies that suggest that you do become more suggestible when exposed to psychedelics. So again, literal goddamn possible brainwashing. So age or no freaking age issues. Um, this person, it, Also, is there any evidence that this person has experience with psychedelics? Because giving someone a high dosage of psychedelics for their first trip is also malpractice, even amongst like stoner culture. This this is why I say like there are dosage milestones here. It honestly, if you're on your first trip, you should be microdosing, but
Yeah,
that's neither here nor
see, this is why I don't do drugs.
there. Hmm.
Well, one
And
of the
this is
many, well, that's one of the many reasons I don't do drugs.
yeah. I mean, again, brainstormer is just generally speaking a cinnamon roll, but that's neither here nor there. But this
Well,
is exactly why when I use psychedelics, and I do intend to use them at some point, I'm using them in a formal ritual structure because they can they can aid second sight and evocation work. So that's the only time I'm using psychedelics is when I'm actually using them for the purposes that they've always been used, which is in shamanic ritual structure. And that's the biggest problem with most drugs. Most of the drugs that we have appropriated in the West were originally used by the original cultures we got them from for spiritual purposes. Like even tobacco used to only be used for spiritual purposes and or like formal ritual purposes, and now we just randomly use it whenever. Psychedelic, same thing. Used to be something that only shamans had access to, and now we're just using it willy nilly.
I don't mean to cut you off, obviously.
Yeah, but we have the boogie, so
Yeah,
moving on.
okay. Another person at the farm told Dakota's parents that the bruising occurred when Miller pinned Dakota to the ground and screamed at her for failing to respond to a question. The protection order said, "Jesus
But
Christ."
like I'm not, I'm I can't say I'm surprised anymore because this person clearly has a hairpin trigger, but good goddamn. There's such a Ezra, my dude, my brother in humanity, um, because that's basically the only thing we share, thank God. Um, there's such a thing as a proportional response. Like, if someone didn't respond to a question, maybe try asking them a second time, or at least making sure that they're aware that you even asked the first time before you freak the fuck out on them.
Um, another,
Uh-huh.
okay. Uh, Takata, Tokata told Insider that she took a microdose of LSD and that the bruises were a result of self-harm she attributed to a close friend's death.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm not gonna let him off the hook for this because that tells me two things. That tells me number one, he's lying because again, psilocybin works its way out of your system in 12 hours, no matter which dose you take, unless you take a ludicrous amount of it. And number two, this actually makes it worse because it means he knows he should have microdosed if he was gonna have her try it at all, but he didn't. He took he had her take far too fucking much and then is surprised when it came back to bite him in the ass. And yes, Dragon Turtle, I saw your uh scenario, and yep, that probably would happen. Um, though to be fair, I wouldn't survive the first time that happened because I don't have Harry's plot armor. I am a as far as I'm aware, I am not special enough for her to accord me mercy. So if this happened one time, I would spontaneously double over with hypothermia. Um, Side note, if I ever spontaneously double over with hypothermia, you know what happened. Anyway, moving on.
She added that some of the bruises may have also occurred when her parents violently dragged her out of Miller's house. Jumping Eagle said Tokata was not dragged at any point.
I mean, that is also possible because I imagine that the parents were not particularly happy at this point and probably did lose control of themselves a little bit. Though, to be fair, which of these do I find more reasonable? I think the parents who are freaked out that their child is high on freaking psilocybin after 3 days um, is more understandable than, well, they dragged her out of here. Yes, they dragged her out of here, Ezra, because you were being an entirely negligent son of a bitch. Like, again, taking the adulthood childhood thing out of it for the sake of the argument. It probably should be there to some degree, but for the sake of the argument, even taking the adulthood childhood thing out of it, when you engage with psilocybin, you should do so under very strict circumstances. You should, for one thing, unless you are a very experienced person who takes psilocybin, you should never take psychedelic drugs alone. You should always have someone there with you, preferably someone who is more experienced than you with this, to um, essentially, for exactly the same reason as you should always have a designated driver or a designated sober person when you go out drinking. But also, yeah, there should always be at least one sober person in the room when you're taking psilocybin, unless you have a lot of experience with psilocybin, because bad trips are a son of a bitch, and people have been known, particularly under the influence of MK Ultra. I always want to say Y2K, but that's not that's the computer resetting thing. But yeah, under MK Ultra, they learned that if they just randomly gave psilocybin to people without their knowledge, because they would start seeing things because psilocybin, several people committed suicide because they were seeing demons from out of nowhere for in their mind no good reason, and then of course they committed suicide because they couldn't take it. This is this is why you should A, always be conscious when you take these things, and B, you should always do so willingly and with a great degree of caution, because otherwise bad. I'm not saying ban psychedelic drugs. Lord knows I'm not saying that, because I genuinely think psychedelic drugs have their uses and should be used for certain things. But I also am well aware that the people with the most experience of doing this are shamans who do so in particular ritualistic circumstances and not just for the lulz. And a massive fuck you goes to whoever it was that decided we should take things that people took only under shamanic guidelines and just treat them like a toy. Because that's not good for exactly the same reason as taking random medical substances, whether they be legal or otherwise, at a whim is not good. These things are for specific functions and specific purposes, and using them outside of those specific purposes is fucked in the head. Anyway, moving on.
Right. Okay. And C, never trust the alphabet agencies.
Well, there's that too. The powers that be are untrustworthy fuckwits because they are human and because they are fucked. And also because the FBI and CIA should have been disbanded several decades ago. They were founded for specific purposes, and those specific purposes have been dealt with. But that's neither here nor there.
Right.
Maybe then.
Yeah. All right. 5 more minutes. Iron Eyes and Jumping Eagle took their daughter back to the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota, as they were leaving. Miller texted them offering to get Dakota around-the-clock psychiatric care if they brought her back to the farm. Okay, see that's just telling. That is, that's not subtle or anything.
Yeah, no, that's Ezra Miller should be locked up for the remainder of his natural life territory there.
Okay, moving on.
Yep.
Jumping Eagle said that in hindsight, she believed Miller was trying to control everything and trying to keep Dakota in their grasp. Tokata. Why the fuck do I keep mispronouncing that?
Because it's probably an Indian word that you're not familiar with saying.
After Tokata's overdose, she stayed with her parents for about 3 weeks, during which they got her a new phone, driver's license, and bank card. Parents discussed filing assault charges in Rob City and requesting a restraining order against Miller, but Tokata said that if they did, she would never talk to them again. Oh my god.
I mean, to be like, I'm of two minds on this because that is a sign that this person is gaslit and probably under some, at the very least, a cult of personality, if not an actual no modifiers cult. But that being said, I have to give her some props for at least loyalty. Granted, that loyalty is misplaced as fuck because it's Ezra frickin' Miller, but I I I will give her props for at least trying to be a decent friend. Her friendship is not warranted and should not be wasted on someone like Ezra Miller, but it shows that underneath all of the Ezra Miller flavored lies, this person is at least a good person. It's just a shame that this good person is being destroyed from the inside by Ezra frickin' Miller and his evil.
Right.
And yes, I'm using the word evil because it has to mean something, goddammit, and I think we've passed through the looking glass.
Mm. Okay. It was a rock and a hard place, Jim People said, and we didn't know the extent of Ezra's manipulation until Kata. I guess we were naive.
I mean, I'm not sure to what extent I would chalk this up to naivety because 9 times out of 10, treating someone like Ezra Miller deserves to be treated would be an overreaction. Like 9 times out of 10, the common sense, well, I'm sure it's not that bad, is probably a good measuring stick. But that 1 out of 10 times, I tell you, that 1 out of 10 times is a doozy. That last that last step on the staircase to nowhere is a doozy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, moving on.
Right. Takata told Insider that while she was in South Dakota, her parents treated her like a prisoner and forced her to participate in ceremonies with a medicine man who made her inhale my own burning hair as he cut off my head. Okay, I mean, that is weird.
Okay,
I'm not going to deny that, but I believe that is something of the culture.
yeah, that's unusual by Western standards, but I wouldn't. Honestly, it's probably some sort of cleansing ritual, and given all the shit that Ezra Miller exposed her to, a cleansing ritual would probably be, like if I like, and I'm well aware that I am no shaman, and I've never claimed to be anything such as a shaman. However, um, if you were if they outsourced this to me as like an occult consultant or whatever, I would recommend a heavy regimen of cleansing rituals. So yeah, the shaman and I are in complete accord on this. However, or I guess I should say, in addition to that point, um, I c- I can imagine that Takata's parents did treat her like a prisoner when they got her home, but I can also imagine that their reasoning was we gave you we gave you freedom and we assumed you could handle it, and it almost resulted in you dying of an overdose. So maybe we should rein things in a little bit. Now, granted, I'm perfectly willing to believe they might have overstretched a little bit. I'm well aware that there's such a thing as overcompensation, and that stretching too far in one direction and then stretching too far in the other direction is not a good thing. But I can understand where they're coming from because they thought their daughter could handle it, and it resulted in their daughter almost dying of an overdose. So pulling in the leash a little bit, not a bad thing.
Hello, Tilium29. Ezra Miller can't run fast enough into a Flashpoint universe to where he is a hero.
No, he should have played the Reverse Flash. I think we're all agreed that Ezra Miller would have been better typecast as the Reverse Flash. But anyway, moving on.
I actually saw someone post the idea that Anthony Starr could play the Reverse Flash.
Honestly, at this point, I think in the same way that I think the only roles that Amber Heard should ever play ever again are villainesses. I think the only roles Ezra Miller should play ever again are villains.
Sure. Anyway. All right.
That's 9:30. I think we can call it there. Or do you want to finish that?
I mean, there's a little left. Then it breaks off into another.
Yeah. Okay. Let's finish the paragraph and we can call it.
Okay. Tokata says her parents told her that she was possessed, and that if she contacted Miller again, she'd die.
Like, again, this might be an overreaction to some degree. However, the only thing they're doing is what I would suggest they do after being exposed to someone like Ezra Miller. Because whether he has genuine spiritual experiences or not, there are parasitic entities who absolutely love personalities like Ezra Miller. It's like a moth to a flame or an anglerfish to something that was exposed to its light. So, yeah, a regimen of cleansing rituals and treating her like she's the victim of possession is not unreasonable at this point. That being said, there are other avenues that I would advise in addition to this. For example, getting completely secular therapy as well as the spiritual treatment. But she's not my child, so where I would advise combining the spiritual regimen with secular therapy, it's not up to me to make the choice. So what have you. Also, modern day psychology is fucked, so that might actually not be doing so good.
So you're saying an exorcism, says Dragon Troll. Or asked Dragon Troll.
I don't think going that far is entirely necessary, but heavy cleanse because it doesn't seem like Tokata is being taken over by an actual entity, which is when you advise exorcism. So, just a heavy cleansing regimen, and I'm willing to believe that the shaman of this particular tribe of natives is experienced enough to know what they're doing, as long as the ritual doesn't involve actually physically harming her or trying to. Because okay, there is a problem with exorcism rituals in that they can sometimes be worse than the disease they're trying to fix, in that they can involve physical harm or psychological harm. But at this point, even what's described by Takada is extreme in terms of its graphicness, but not extreme in terms of physical or psychological harm. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Bruno?
Yeah.
I felt deeply uncared for and deeply unsafe there, she said, calling those weeks some of the worst of her life. Jumping Eagle told Insider that Tokata was free to come and go while on the reservation, while her hair wasn't cut during this time. That her hair wasn't cut during this time, and that no one said she was possessed.
Okay, so she might just be being overreacting.
Right.
Again, especially given that I'm assuming there's evidence as to whether or not her hair was cut. And therefore, if her father figure is telling the truth and that nobody cut her hair,
It was your
then
mother.
it's probably just a fairly normal kind of cleansing ritual. And again, I would advise combining that with secular therapy, but not my child, so I can't say.
Um,
Because because let it never be said that I've ever told anyone to um forego secular or medical procedures in favor of mystical ones. Never ever do that. Magical magical cures are for magical ails only, and even they can be aided by supplementing them with medical or secular treatment. So yeah, no, I'm not one of those crazies who's like substitute this unusual thing for this incredibly more secular thing. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is I don't see there being any harm to supplementing secular treatment with spiritual treatment as well. Especially because Ezra Miller is a new age woo woo fuck who seems to be dabbling in forces beyond his ken.
Alright, after several weeks, Tokata made a plan to travel to New York to work on music with a friend her parents trusted. Instead, she went to meet Miller, and that's where we're going to end it for now.
Uh, cliffhanger to be continued.
Sorry, I just
No, I know I was mostly saying that to be funny because it kind of pulled the classic like sharp note fade to black to be continued thing.
right.
Join
Uh,
join us join us in a month when we get back around probably to covering this.
yeah. Okay. All right. So this one the Dawn sent me. Um, it's from Mashable.com. Sniper Elite suggests Sniper Elite suggests. I can't read that because of this fucking thing.
Pop-ups.
It's like one of those things asking to receive notifications. I'm trying to click dismiss, but I'm not. It's not going away.
Ah.
Hold on. Then I can. You son of a bitch. Okay, give me like a couple minutes while I try and figure this out. I'm gonna.
Okay.
Um,
We interrupt this program to bring you technical difficulties. Yeah.
we're doing fine. So I just copied the. I got it into like another page so I can read the damn title.
Okay.
That damn thing is not going away.
Mm-hmm.
So
Try looking for an archive of it. It might be archived.
no, it's fine. I can.
Okay.
Right. So Sniper Elite 5 suggests not all Nazis were bad. That's garbage. That's the title. And that's written by Adam Rosenberg and published May 27th, 2020. Why?
I mean, there were some nominal Nazis who never actually engaged in any of the crimes that the Nazis committed. So by
We are
definition,
not. Are we seriously playing devil's advocate here?
hmm I, I mean, my main issue is her arguments here.
Is
Uh,
his argument.
why do all of these male writers write like women? God damn it!
Right. The subheader is Nazis are bad. Shouldn't be a controversial position to take. It technically isn't, to be fair.
No, but Nazis were still people and thus still worthy of occasional bits of empathy and or concern and or at least rational thought. It should also not be a controversial opinion.
Right.
And also you can acknowledge that someone is bad while still also acknowledging that they are a human being.
Like Dragon Troll brings up something interesting. I look at morality in terms of intent. So some of the true believers weren't evil because they thought they were doing good, or at least justified.
No, what I'm saying is the problem with Nazism is the actual crimes that it led people to commit, i.e., you can be a Nazi in your own head all day, every day, but as long as you never actually try to harm anyone for it, then I don't see that as, you know, there's a difference between someone who supported the party and someone who literally was the one in charge of the gas chambers.
All right.
Also, there are people who after um the end of World War II had a good hard look at themselves and went, "Oh my God, what did I do?" That doesn't necessarily get them off the hook entirely, but we can't act as though once a Nazi, always a Nazi, and also every single person who's ever had anything to do with Germany during the 1940s or 30s is as bad as the guy who gleefully turned on the gas. There are gradients here, and even the worst people who were Nazis were still people, and therefore still worthy of some human consideration.
Yeah, case by case scenario, honestly. Like the what was it, Nimberg Trials?
Yeah. There's a reason why we had trials instead of just lining them all up and shooting them. For one thing, if we had just lined them all up and shot them, that would have made the people who were opposing Nazis literally like it's one of those things of the reason Nazis were bad is because they dehumanized a bunch of people and tried to kill a bunch of people. So how are we going to respond to these people who dehumanized a bunch of people and tried to kill a bunch of people?
Anyway, I'm sorry.
Oh, we're going to dehumanize them and kill a bunch of them. Do you see how that doesn't fix the problem?
All right, moving on.
Yeah.
All right. Let's be clear. There's no such thing as a good Nazi. Never has been. Once I realized that Sniper Elite 5 is okay with you sparing Nazi lives, and in fact gives you tools to help decide who's worth saving, it was hard to focus on anything else. Okay, that's a hyper fixation on a gameplay mechanic.
Yeah, also, good or bad, they were still human, i.e., they were still people. And I find it disturbing that your approach to dealing with people with a different worldview from you is just, well, they lost their status as a human being because they believed the wrong thing. That's a bit jarring,
Yeah.
especially when you consider that the standard response of social justice types to every kind of villain or every kind of other morally ambiguous character is, well, we have to look at things in context. We have to be more morally relativistic. But when it's Nazis, no, all of a sudden moral relativism goes out the window. Um, Clinical and anthropological distance goes out the window. The ability to be objective and think of things rationally and procedurally goes out the window. It's just, you believe this wrong thing, therefore, bullet in the head. Never mind that that's also what the Nazis did. In fact, I would go so far as to say that if there was something universally evil about Nazism, it was the fact that they dehumanized and murdered people en masse.
Right.
So responding to people who dehumanized and murdered a bunch of people en masse by dehumanizing them and murdering them en masse does not defeat the problem, do you see?
I'll wait for them to finish typing that because I don't think that's the whole thing. Anyway, Cyber Elite 5 out May 26th is the latest in developer Rebellion's enduring series of World War II set action games. The original Sniper Elite launched in 2005, but it wasn't until 2012's Sniper Elite V2 that Rebellion embraced the gratuitous nature and open-ended design that would guide each subsequent release in the series.
Uh-huh. I don't really have anything to add there. That was just like literally history of the franchise.
Okay. 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 Giant Turtle. Oh, they are well beyond that. Now it's you must earn your right to be considered human. You can still lose it due to retroactive changes to this standard, sometimes in opposition to what came before, based on unsubstantial accusations, or even just because it was convenient to throw you under the bus. But
No,
hold on,
I know,
hold on.
go ahead. Okay.
But at least by having the correct politics, you could be considered for humanity. Oh, and being born, right? Can't forget that.
I mean, I know they do that. What I'm saying is they also are advocates for things like anthropological distance, cultural and moral relativism, um, looking at things in historical context, etc., etc. And it's funny to me that they can look at, for example, fundamentalist Muslims and say things like, well, you have to look at things in terms of their culture. Well, maybe you're taking their culture out of context. Well, maybe this, well, maybe that, etc. Like, it's moral relativism for everything except for their own history and their own. For example, the recent movie The Woman King. When people point out rightfully that the Dahomey were a tribe of African slavers, um, a bunch of people have responded with, well, you have to look at things in a anthropological, cultural, and moral context. You can't just apply modern day moral structures to ancient cultures and da 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 da. But when it's people in the modern world who have political disagreements with them, or whether it's when it's history of their own culture, all of that anthropological objectivity and cultural and moral relativism goes right out the fucking window. I.e., they have more empathy for the fundamentalist Muslims of today than they do for the conservatives or even libertarians, right-leaning libertarians of today. And that to me seems like the wrong way around. If you're going to hold anyone to hyper moral strictures, it should be other cultures, and you should be somewhat lenient within your own culture. But no, they've completely inverted that, whereby the more distant from the modern world or the modern West a culture is, the more we have to look at things in terms of cultural and historical context and moral and cultural relativism. But the closer something is to the modern context, the less anthropological objectivity or moral relativism you're supposed to apply to things. And that's the wrong way around. Granted, I think you should apply those standards to everything, if you're going to apply them at all. But if you're going to be selective with the amount of empathy you're willing to give people, you probably should start by giving people who are more similar to you empathy and then fan out from there. Not saying you can't have empathy for all peoples, but I'm saying that if you're going to be selective with your empathy, you should apply it beginning with yourself and moving outward. Anyway, moving on. Brainstormer.
Yeah, no, I was okay. All right, giant turtle. I'm gonna read these and then we're gonna move on. Okay. Morality at the time in the region painted them as evil. The time machine asked anyone in that section of Africa if they are morally good, and they would likely tell you, hell no. I say it's more just.
Bless you.
Thank you. I'd say it's more just them trying to rewrite history, like that 1619 project. 1619 project.
It's the modern day academic woo-woo thing where they say that America was started because slavery.
Shut the fuck up. Thank you, Giant Troll. Yeah, those stupid people out there, just shut the fuck up. They take the same approach with real history, religion, ideology, and culture as they do with fictional canon.
Yes, yes, they do.
Yeah. I think I bit my tongue a bit.
Oh no. Anyway, back to the grind.
Yeah. Each one on its own is marvelously satisfying Nazi murder simulator where you're regularly treated to a slow motion X-ray vision views of your bullets tearing through their targets' bodies. But Sniper Elite 5 takes the extra troubling step of baking in mechanisms to work to humanize the Nazi forces arrayed against you, and it sucks. It just plain sucks. Okay.
You do know they were human, though, right?
Right. Yeah, there are a lot of as much as I don't like to bring up movies in this case, but there are biopic movies. Granted, I will say they're not 100% accurate, obviously.
No, because movies got a movie at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But there are movies that depict, I don't watch a lot of those movies, to be completely honest, because it's not really my jam in terms of movies.
Yeah.
But I've seen a few. Mainly my favorite one, in the limited amount I've seen, is The Pianist. If anyone's ever seen that one,
I think I remember that one.
Adrian Brody was the lead.
I think I remember that. Was that the black and white one?
No, that was Schindler's List. Steven Spielberg.
No, I know Schindler's List was black and white, but I could have sworn there, or was that The Artist that I'm thinking of, the black and white one that came out a couple of years ago? It was black and white on purpose. I can't remember what it was.
No.
I think it might have been called The Artist. But yeah, here's the thing. This whole how dare you humanize Nazis thing. The problem with the way you're framing this, my dear, is that whatever bad things you might think about Nazis, you can't say they weren't human. That's why Nazis are scary, frankly, is because the fact that they are all, for the most part, fairly normal human beings, just in really, 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 really terrible, fucked up circumstances. That's the part of Nazism that is, if there is a part of Nazism that is to be feared, it's the part where we should all understand that on some level, if you put us in bad enough circumstances and someone came along saying they were the one that had the answer to your problem, it wouldn't, I'm not saying it wouldn't matter what their solution was, but when you're in the middle of suffering, along comes the devil waiting to make a Faustian bargain, and the Nazis were the same way. Germany was absolutely fucked over by all of the rest of Europe after World War One. Its economy was shit. Its like cultural self-respect was shit. They were constantly at war with their neighbors, and on and on and on and on. And it was this instability, this tragic state of affairs that Heinrich Himmler and his crew, and I do stress Himmler more than Hitler because here's the other thing, I'm going to say something that is controversial but true, and then I'm probably going to get pitchforks and torches lining up at some point. But Hitler was very much just a pawn of the Nazi Party originally. He was just an art school dropout, or rather an art school kick out, who was drinking at a bar one night. He listened to a few members of what would one day become the Nazi Party make some speeches. He was on board with their speeches, and then they saw him as a tool they could use to get their message across.
You are
So they
forgetting he did fight in the Great War.
Yeah, he did fight it. He did fight in World War One. I'm not disputing that. I'm just saying that Hitler was very much just a pawn in the Nazi scheme ultimately, because originally he was just an ex-soldier and an art school dropout drinking in a pub one night, and he was eating up what they were selling, and some higher ups in the Nazi Party went, you know, if we get, you know, if we give this child the proper training, he could be a good tool for the cause, yeah. And they hooked him up with Karl Kraft, who was a medium and a occultist and a stage magician in some. And yes, I do kind of hate that, but that's not the end of it. That he dabbled in both things, but he basically told Hitler how to command a stage presence. He trained Hitler in how to how to have a commanding stage presence, and the rest is history. But yeah, let it never be said that Hitler was anything other than a pawn in the Nazi scheme. That doesn't absolve him from all the shit the Nazis did, but it does mean that if you really want to get to who was pulling the strings of the Nazi Party, Himmler is honestly more your better bet than Hitler, because Hitler was Himmler's idea, basically, is what I'm saying. But in any case, the point I was actually trying to make before we got off into the historical weeds is any society, if it was desperate enough, would become an authoritarian regime in the wrong circumstances. And it's worth occasionally reminding ourselves of that, because there are times when we should be grateful. You know, the old phrase, "There but for the grace of God go I." The Nazis is very much one of those cases where if World War One had fucked over America instead of Germany, who knows? There might have been an American fascist party at some point. And we would all be poorer for it, but nevertheless, the people involved would still be human. Unfortunately, human nature does have a dark side, but that doesn't change the fact that they're still fucking human. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. um, okay, so sorry, I thought I was gonna sneeze or like barf, but not barf, but burp or something.
Yeah.
So much so that I decided to put the game down about halfway through the campaign. The long arc of Sniper Elite 5 is immaterial to the issue that's made continuing progress such a chore for me. The latest sequel's problematic addition of non-lethal approaches to combat and the way players are incentivized to use them is evident right from the start.
You mean you find it annoying to be reminded that the people you're okay with shooting are also people. And that's the other thing that I didn't even get to point out in the previous segment. It's funny to me how gleeful this person is to have a murder what they acknowledge to be a murder simulator. It just has to be the right kind of people. The people that they can convince themselves aren't really people. I.e., this is how this is why I hate the concept of dehumanization, because unless you're dealing with some extremely esoteric shit, all the humans that you ever interact with will be humans. Therefore, to dehumanize is always wrong because it's always factually inaccurate, and to humanize is always right to some degree because, again, excluding the possibility of getting involved in either exopolitics or metaphysical politics, the entities you're going to interact with on a day-to-day basis, even in wars and even in political conflicts, are still fucking human. So if you dehumanize, you are being factually wrong. And if you humanize, you're at least on the way to being right because the people you're dealing with are de facto human. And it's annoying that you can just stick the right word in front of the word human, and then all of a sudden the humanity is gone. I.e., it's okay to murder people indiscriminately as long as those people are Nazis, derp. Yeah, no, they're still human. If you don't believe in murdering humans indiscriminately, then no amount of changing the term should affect that. Now, it's different if you're being faced with a Nazi carrying out Nazism, i.e., Nazism in the abstract, not necessarily evil. Nazism in practice, definitely evil, i.e., if you catch someone building a gas chamber, by all means shoot them in the head. But up until that point, all they're doing is expressing beliefs you don't hold.
Right.
Just like, you can't shoot a random person on the street, but if that random person on the street breaks into your house in the middle of the night and threatens your family, self-defense.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. If you're not familiar with the series, it's helpful to think of Sniper Elite in its current form as a World War II spin-off, the Hitman series. Just like IO Interactive's Lush Murder Mousetrap, Sniper Elite 5 drops players into large open maps deep behind enemy lines in 1940s Europe. Mission objectives are flexible, bending and shifting as you scour each map for intel, and the whole world is a sniper's playground.
Uh-huh. And my issue with this is this person seems like the kind of person who finds violent video games to be annoying when they're not, i.e., when the people in question aren't Nazis. This seems like the kind of person who would argue you shouldn't be killing people indiscriminately because they're still people, even if they're fictional people. But when you change random person to Nazi, all of a sudden it's I don't need to be reminded they're still human because they've sold their humanity to the ideology of Nazism, derp. And it's like, again, the parts of Nazism I disagree with aren't the well, okay, on logical grounds I disagree with the premises of their ideology. On moral grounds, however, it is their actions that I have an issue with, i.e., you shouldn't kill people indiscriminately, you shouldn't dehumanize people, you shouldn't collectivize people, etc. Um, and as long as the person in question isn't in the process of doing those things, then all they're doing is thinking and or saying things. And no amount of thinking and or saying things should be illegal.
Mm.
Doing certain things are harmful and therefore should be stopped at the point at which they become harmful. But until the harm principle has been violated, no action should be taken.
Yeah. Joey?
Yep.
Right. It's the kind of game that is commonly referred to as a sandbox. You're in this big world, and you have things that need to get done there, but the specific steps you take completely to complete a given mission are up to you. Being able to take a non-lethal approach makes it possible for expert players to complete a sniper like 5 level with no alarms raised and no one killed other than the target. A nod to Hitman's difficult silent assassin challenges. Okay.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine with this part. It doesn't really do anything other than describe the game. Next.
Yeah. Rebellion is in the awkward position here of making not all Nazis argument. It's repugnant.
Um, they're not. There were some. There were some people in Germany who were just people in Germany. You know.
Also, some there's also like an argument to be made with like the whole um, what's those that did follow, like not all of them believed in the party. It was more so they conflated the ideals of the party with nationalism and patriotism.
Yeah. I.e., Germany is currently in a shithole, and this is the only person who's giving me any solutions to the possibility that Germany is a shithole. I don't even necessarily like their solutions, but they're the only one that's talking sense. So I it's kind of like um someone support someone supporting the Nazis because they want the trains to run on time again, but really disliking the whole Untermensch destruction thing. But unfortunately, no other party in Germany was like, we want to make the trains run on time without destroying countless human lives.
Right. I mean, still, it's not really an excuse for what they allowed to happen or did. And if I remember correctly, there was generally um, what was it? There was a underground resistance movement during
Yeah,
the war, right?
yeah. And there were also many people who were even in the party who had moments where they would stop and look at themselves and go, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" And then they would hate the position they were in, but they were also aware that if they didn't continue doing the thing they were doing, they and or the people they love would die. And don't get me wrong, no one should ever have to make that choice. But unfortunately, you know, let's play the quantum leap card. You find yourself in a situation where you realize you just did something morally repugnant, but you can't stop doing it, or everyone you love will die. What are you gonna do? There are people who will genuinely take a stand and try to right the wrong, and those people would usually end up getting shot. Or there are people who would keep their head down, just do enough to get by with, and not raise a fuss, and then wait for the war to be over and wait for the party to be dethroned, and then immediately go, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to be doing the things." There's also people who didn't want to be doing the things they were doing at all, but were moved forward by gunpoint, i.e., they would say things to their commanding officer like, "I don't want to be doing this," and the commanding officer would say, "If you don't do what we tell you to do, you will be shot."
Yeah.
And and then yeah, which these are the kinds of questions that I imagine the creators of the game are trying to put in your mind before you go on, you know, killing Nazis indiscriminately, because like it or not, as I said, Nazis are still people.
Right.
They might be people who've done bad things, but they are still people.
Right.
And people
Um,
probably shouldn't be killed indiscriminately. Anyway, moving on.
Right. The problem here is that we're talking about Nazis, wretched villains of our modern history. I don't have any interest whatsoever in saving Nazis, let alone a game that manufactures reasons to do so.
What about Nazis? What about Nazis that don't want to be Nazis? What about Nazis that regret being Nazis? What about Nazis that are being held by gunpoint and forced to be Nazis? What about people who are convertible if they were exposed to the counter argument? Then that's the other thing. Given Nazi propaganda, keep in mind that a lot of times people in Germany were raised with this propaganda and had never been given any other options, i.e., the counter argument had never been made to them. And there are people who, when the Allies broke through Germany, just needed to be presented with the proper counter arguments and then went, oh my God, what did I just do for 10 years? Fuck. Which again is something that's worth reminding yourself, by the way, no matter how awful these people might be, they're still people. And I find it funny that your criteria for dehumanization is not something immutable, is not something someone is born with or born into. It's a philosophical and political position someone chooses to adopt and could choose to stop adopting. I.e., when it comes to differences of opinion, sometimes the best thing you should do is present counter arguments. Because you'd be surprised how often simply presenting the alternative argument can work. I mean, not to be too flippant about it, but there's a reason why there's that one Mitchell and Webb sketch, the Are We the Baddies sketch, because there were actually people in World War II era Germany who worked for the Nazi Party who had a good hard look at themselves one day and went, Gott in Himmel, I'm the bad guy.
Right.
Runs away.
All right. Good. Yeah, keep moving.
Yeah.
Transfer raises an interesting point. That's why I hate that just following orders is no valid excuse. It basically mandates two things: that you must die on every hill for what is right, and two, it seems to assume that there is some objective and universally accepted morality for everyone.
Well, there's that, and there's also the issue of if someone is raised in a given culture and never given the other options, um, shouldn't you at least give them the option? Like, couldn't you at least explain to the young Nazi that, like, have you considered that you can have patriotism and nationalism without murdering a bunch of people?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be that guy, but some of the time, all it takes is for one of these ideologues to meet someone in the opposite camp. Like, there's a famous guy, there's a famous black guy who made it his mission in life to deconvert the members of the Ku Klux Klan, and he did that by befriending them. And he got so good at befriending members of the Ku Klux Klan and deconverting them that he started collecting their hoods as a sign of this is the amount of people I've successfully deconverted from Ku Klux Klan ideology. I'm not saying that there was a Jewish person who managed to do that in Nazi Germany, but there are a lot of Nazis who said, you know, or people who were raised in the Hitler Youth who said, I believed all this Nazi crap until I met a Jewish person, and then I felt really, really bad. Because sometimes that's all it takes. Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Sorry. Don't even then. Let's say the SS set. SS officer was saying, kill those Jews or get killed.
That's you.
Thank you. That they will die anyway, and if anything, they'll probably be replaced by a sadistic fuck, and they might go. Oh, he didn't finish. Okay. Oh. Well, let's continue. And
Yeah. We might have to just ignore the chat for a little while so we can get through this, and then we'll come back through. Yeah, that's the other thing. It's not usually just kill these Jews or you will die. It's kill these Jews and I'll make you watch me kill your family and then you die.
Yeah, there was also a thing, if I remember, because I remember watching and reading the book in school, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
I think we read it too.
Yeah, we talked about
in like middle school.
Okay. And we did talk about it a bit as well. That sometimes if there was a person working within the German military or whatever, and one of their family became a dissenter that either fled or escaped before things got really bad.
Guilt by association. This person did a wrong thing, therefore their entire family and or circle of friends needs to suffer for it.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. In fact, I make it a personal challenge at any given sniper elite level to wipe every Nazi off the map before I move to the next mission. It's a small act of emotional catharsis that has always felt to me like the reason people tend to enjoy World War II set shooting games. It's downright trying to obliterate Nazis. I'm sorry, I had to finish.
And again, but this is the thing that disturbs me about this. This person, again, seems like the kind of person who, when someone destroys a bunch of fictional monsters in a video game, they're the kind that say, you shouldn't kill all the orcs. What did the orcs ever do to you? And this, that, and the other. But when it's Nazis, when it's people that actually might have existed, well, they ideologically disagree with me, and therefore they've given up their humanity card, and it's like, okay, so are we supposed to abide by the we are the world, universal humanity, have empathy for everyone standard, or are we supposed to have the kill everyone I don't like standard? These two standards are completely incompatible, and you would see how incompatible they are if it weren't for the massive amount of special pleading you're doing, because, oh, they're just a Nazi? Well, that means they're not really human then, right? So it's okay to kill them indiscriminately. And I'm like, no. Either you regard everyone with some kind of universal humanity and regret having to kill them, in which case you limit the killing you have to do to when it's reasonable and or called for, or you like killing indiscriminately when it's in a video game and there's no moral equivalency to any of this. But this person wants to have it both ways, where there is a moral equivalency to what you do in video games, and you should be able to kill specific kinds of humans indiscriminately because they are the invalid kind of people. And yet, and this is why it hurts my brain. The thing that makes Nazis as awful as they were, go ahead and ask someone what makes Nazis bad. And I guarantee you, especially the academically inclined types, will say they dehumanized and collectivized a bunch of groups of people and killed them indiscriminately. And the reason I point that out is, if it's bad to dehumanize and collectivize large groups of people and kill them indiscriminately, then why are you doing it to the people who did that? because then it's just everyone killing everyone else indiscriminately because they're the wrong kind of people, and then whoops, either there's no humans left or everyone is dehumanizing everyone else. And then all of a sudden we realize, wait, didn't we start this conflict to prevent people from being killed collectively and indiscriminately? I'm sure they're morally bad people, so throw the Molotov. Derp.
Anyway, well.
Yep.
Being able to knock out foes using your hands or special purpose ammunition in any hostile encounter complicates that fundamental appeal, especially since players are incentivized to use the new tools. You level up as you play Sniper Elite 5, earning skill points that are sent to upgrade your various abilities and improve your virtual soldiers' survivability. That progression is powered in part by unlockable medals that you earn passively, say for knocking a certain number of Nazis unconscious. Okay, it's again. I think they also forget that this. I believe this is mainly just a gameplay game, right?
Well, yeah, but what again? The thing that annoys me is they want to have the plausible deniability of I'm only doing this in a video game, and also want the moral high ground to judge other people who kill indiscriminately under other circumstances in a video game. So either all video games are just fiction, so we can do whatever we want in them, or we should have moral equivalencies to video games, in which case you are, yes, wrong to indiscriminately murder any kind of human, even if it's a Nazi. Especially given that the game is going out of its way to give you the necessary information to make the trolley problem choice. Because this has always been my biggest problem with the trolley problem as a moral exercise. Whenever I ask, what do I know about the person or the people on the track, the professor would always say, you know nothing, or everyone is blank to you. And I'm like, okay, well, then that doesn't give me enough information to make the choice. Because I do genuinely believe there are some people who do deserve to die. And I'm fine with admitting that. But I actually have to know things about them in order to make that determination. There is not enough information for me to answer this question if you don't give me enough information about the people. Whereas this game is going out of its way to give you the necessary information to make that choice, to make the choice of where is the line between acceptable to kill and not acceptable to kill. And this person actively resents that extra information, even though in every other context, whether it's orcs in Dungeons and Dragons, whether it's um, Daleks in Doctor Who, whether it's Klingon in Star Trek, in every other context, both real and fictional, they say, well, you have to look at things in a moral relativist or cultural relativist context and abide by the rules of anthropological objectivity. But when it's people of your own culture or your own culture's history, all of a sudden that distance doesn't apply anymore. And that baffles me. Because you would think that if objectivity and rational distance are things that are supposed to be strived for, you would want to apply it even more to your next door neighbor as you do to that tribesman over in the African bush or wherever. I.e., again, the issue of they have more empathy for Muslims, fundamentalist Muslims, than they do for their own political opponents in their own culture. I.e., they can have empathy for people who are half a world or half a millennia away from where they are, but not people who are their next door neighbors. That seems completely fucked to me. Either give everyone empathy, which is what I would prefer, or give nobody empathy. But you can't just selectively pick and choose. Okay, the people who are distant from me, they deserve empathy. The people who are my next door neighbors, fuck them, burn them entirely. It's completely backwards. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Okay. There are plenty of other ways to level up, including a long list of medals that have nothing to do with the non-lethal gameplay. so those less than fatal tools and actions can be safely ignored without impeding your progress. Okay, so
You have the choice or of to do this or not do this. You just you just dislike that there's a choice that isn't one you would make, i.e., you think the choice to spare a Nazi's life is a bad choice. Even though in every other context, again, sparing life is always the better. You like again, when your morality is functioning properly, sparing life becomes so mundane as to be the obvious choice. But when you're dealing with people you don't like, all of a sudden your human detection software goes on the fritz and you kill people indiscriminately. Which actually, given that you're drawing an equivalency between video games and real life in this way, that implies to me that if you found out one of your next door neighbors was an actual IRL Nazi, you would actually find nothing wrong in killing them. And that's the disturbing part. Given that you're arguing you shouldn't offer these kind of moral equivalencies in a video game because it has abstract implications, you also thereby mean that you shouldn't have these abstract implications in real life when faced with Nazis or people you assume to be Nazis, because they don't deserve to live either. I think is where this ultimately ends up. And it's disturbing because you're supposed to be the people who are all intellectual and all empathy is for everyone and da 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 da. Asterisk. Well, everyone except the people we've defined as invalid, irredeemably invalid. And also asterisk. The reason why Nazis are bad is because they found certain people to be irredeemably invalid. And that's the part of the hypocrisy that breaks my brain. That Nazis are bad because they dehumanize people. And since they dehumanize people, they deserve to be dehumanized. Derp.
right.
Moving on.
Well, I'm just gonna say something. Um, kind of pull a similar thing to make a comparison example. The game Assassin's Creed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an open it well, sort of. It's an open sandbox uh, stealth action game,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously, since the name is Assassin's Creed, you're capable of killing people, but you're also allowed to be non-lethal as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard no one say a damn thing about
No,
that.
because they can understand why you're supposed to have empathy for Templars or assassins. They don't understand their ability to extend empathy completely stops with regards to it. This also reminds me of that one extra credits video that I think everyone has seen. Although I'm gonna say this because it's a controversial thing, but it's actually this article is actually worse than that extra credits video because that extra credit video at least gave games the option to explain whether or not a given um, opponent was pressed into service. Like he literally said, if the game explicitly tells you that this person was pressed into service, then it's fine to spare them. But this person is being presented with the extra credit guy's ideal game, one where you're actually given the moral context necessary to make the choice, and they resent the choice because they want the excuse to indiscriminately murder people and dehumanize people. And that's a whole nother level of fucked up. To say, stop making me identify with Nazis because I don't have enough context is one thing. But to say, stop giving me the appropriate context and the appropriate extra information because I don't want to think about it, I just want to have fun dehumanizing this group of people, is a whole nother level of fucked up. Moving on.
Right. Okay. It's hard to set aside the fact that they exist, though, especially given the justification Rebellion has offered for including them in the first place.
Say that again?
It's hard to set aside the fact that they exist, relating to the less than fatal tools and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Especially given the justification Rebellion has offered for including them in the first place.
Again, this is why this person scares me infinitely more than the extra credit guy. Because again, the extra credit guy was being a moron, but he at least said, if the game specifically tells you that this character was pressed into service against their will, then it's okay. This person is being given the tools to see Nazis as humans, and not only are they rejecting it, which is perfectly fine because, you know, free will and, it's your gameplay and all that, they resent that it was even included because they ideologically and philosophically don't think we should be encouraged to extend empathy or humanity to Nazis. Even though we know full stop there are people who regretted what they did and were guilt ridden for the rest of their life. We know there were people who didn't want to be doing what they were doing, but were motivated by the point of a gun or the point of torture. We know that there are people who did one or two things and then immediately became grief stricken and switched sides. We know that there are people who were basically party bureaucrats who never actually did any of the violent shit that other Nazis did, and yet this person would rather they be put in the same category. Um, like there are all sorts of extenuating circumstances and instead extenuating humanity here that normally would get it's from a different culture, it's from a different time in history, it's from an oppressed group, therefore we should extend them empathy and we shouldn't blame them for the violent shit they're doing, treatment. But because it's the people who this person sees as cartoonishly one-dimensionally invalid, they they turn off they turn off all of their morals, all of their ethics, all of their uh, intellectualism and all of their higher brain functions basically, and it's just like, well, this may be a human being, but it's a human being who chose to do a bad thing, therefore death.
Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
I went looking for some kind of explanation as to why a Nazi murder simulator was introduced would introduce a feature which immediately undermines its series' signature kill cams. I came across this video from a YouTuber called the Hidden Object Guru. It normally includes an explanation from Rebellion head of design Jordan Woodward, alongside the video creator's own incredibly well articulated breakdown of the issues I'm grappling with here. Okay, we're not gonna watch that just because time and
Yeah. Skip.
although I will say this, I am actually subscribed to this guy. Not for this video, mind you. It was actually I didn't even know this video was made by this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually like stuff related to what was it? That studio who does those like movie games, like the one with what do they call it? The Dark Pictures anthology games. Anyone knows what those are?
I think so.
Yeah. Anyway, according to Woodward, the addition of non-lethal tools is all about offering choice to the player and getting them to think about every decision they make in-game. It continues with what is initially a rather dry and matter-of-fact justification. Some players do like to clear the entire map, but there are those who also prefer to limit their kills, focusing only on the major target. Now, in that sense, non-lethal tools used to spare virtual Nazi lives are about filling up the sandbox with more ways to play. Yeah, this.
Um, Again, we're left with the assumption that you assume that someone being a Nazi means they forfeit the right to life.
And not even that. It's just like it's gameplay. Like,
But it's even more frustrating than that because this person acknowledges that they have the option not to spare them. The issue is that this person doesn't believe that it's moral for the game to even give other players the option to spare them, i.e., we shouldn't even think about sparing Nazis because they're Nazis. We should just let ourselves turn our sense of ethics off and shoot them indiscriminately. And it leads to very telling logic with regards to what this person would do if they were faced with an actual flesh and blood Nazi in real life. Would they apply the same logic to a person? Could they look someone in the eye, someone who willingly self-avows and says, "Yes, I am a Nazi"? Would they be able to look someone in the eye and pull the trigger without even letting that person explain their reasons or explain their circumstances?
okay.
Even though their answer to um, criminals is bail reform and letting people off easy and doing rehabilitation rather than punitive justice and so on. Even though that's the approach these sorts of people have to all of those kind of criminals, when it's a particular ideology or a particular framework that the person is operating within, all of a sudden, all that moral relativism, all that anthropological objectivity and distance, all that cultural relativism, right out the window, all that empathy right out the window. You willingly chose to be this thing and therefore death indiscriminately. It's genuinely frightening. Not only I don't want this choice, but I don't think it's moral for anyone to have to make this choice.
Done.
Damn. Yeah. Moving on.
Okay. I can understand that design approach, even if I don't agree with it here. Games like Hitman have the ability to provide wonderfully unique character-authored experiences. The latest Sniper Elite releases have moved in the same direction as Rebellion, has grown more confident in crafting and engaging in multifaceted video game sandbox. But there's a profoundly upsetting dissonance in the way non-lethal mechanics clash here with the emotional resonance of a Nazi murder simulator. It feels good to kill Nazis, and it feels bad to feel their lives. Gamified catharsis. What the fuck?
So just to translate that into more normal language, I understand why this mechanic exists, and I even prefer it in other settings. But it feels good to kill Nazis, and it feels bad to let them live. So even though this is an option that I will not be availing myself of, I don't think anyone should have to, because the moral implications of letting a kind of human live is bad, and the moral implications of letting all of a single kind of human die feels good. This is fucking terrifying. Because again, I have to ask the question, if this is what this feels like, if this is what this person believes with regards to games, and they acknowledge that there is some kind of moral parity between games and real life, or think that in some way, then what would this person do to a flesh and blood, self avowing Nazi? Or even, and this is where it gets doubly creepy, what about a person that they just think is a Nazi who doesn't actually who isn't someone who they assume is a Nazi based on misunderstanding the other person's framework rather than someone who actually never mind the self-avowed Nazis who actually do choose to call themselves that. What about if this person ran into, I don't know, Sargon or um Short Fat Otaku or me or you on the street, and they assumed that anyone who opposed social justice must be a fascist and a Nazi? Is our humanity entirely forfeit in this person's schema just because we hold a different framework that this person is not capable of understanding, or a framework that this person is capable of conflating with Nazism?
You done?
Yeah, yeah. Moving on.
Don't humanize Nazis in your gratuitously violent action game, ever. Rebellion's own explanation goes on to clarify that disconnect, but the semblance is deeply disappointing. Shut the fuck up, you ignorant jackass.
Uh, Sweetheart, they were human. As awful as they were, and they were awful. They were truly awful people. But they were truly awful people. I.e., don't dehumanize someone who can be literally nothing other than a human. Not only is it questionable in the abstract and illogical, it is factually inaccurate. If you are dehumanizing something or someone who you know is a human, then to hell with morality, to hell with the abstract, you are being factually wrong, and you are making a very weighty moral choice on the grounds of being factually wrong. And that is very, very dangerous, to make a choice based on information that you know is factually wrong, even as you use it knowing it's factually wrong. Moving on.
Right, okay. One of the things that makes Sniper Elite unique is that once you have focused on an AI character, you get a small synopsis about them and their life. Woodward explained in his email to the hidden object killer. The content of these may also affect someone's decision to kill or pacify.
You mean getting more information on a character might give context as to why they're doing the morally questionable thing that you're seeing them do. I.e., maybe there's a perfectly justifiable reason why they're there that doesn't involve I am mustache twirlingly evil, mwahaha, and I enjoy killing people, mwahaha. Maybe it's one of those cases where someone was forced into it. Maybe it's one of those cases where they regret doing it, but they know they'll be tortured or their family will be tortured if they don't do it, and etc. and etc. and etc. and so on. I.e., you don't want to deal with the fact that there might be some circumstances where you can understand why someone would be a Nazi and would be inclined to spare them accordingly. You would prefer to believe that someone doing nothing but abiding by a different set of moral principles than you makes them non-human. And again, morality or no freaking morality, that is a factually inaccurate statement. To dehumanize anyone other than a non-human is factually inaccurate, morality or no freaking morality. And any choice you would make based on that dehumanization is a choice made on something that you know is factually inaccurate. And yet you're still willing to do it. And that's where my brain beats itself into a wall. Moving on.
Right, okay. He's talking about a feature flourish that actually predates Sniper Elite 5 when you spy an enemy through sniper scope or binoculars and keep the crosshairs trained there for a few seconds. Basic battles and a line or two of biographical info pops up on the screen. It was definitely weird to see the occasional sympathetic Nazi in Sniper Elite 4 when the feature first popped up, but as a hidden object notes in his video, those Nazis were still threats that you could only deal with one way: bloody murder.
Okay, this is actually funny. So this author is admitting that some of the biographies that she was offered, some of the information she was offered about these people that she God damn it. This person writes like this person's way of writing is very feminine. Every time I imagine this person, they register me as you. But anyway, this author admits that getting the extra information made those Nazis sympathetic. And yet, even though her even though their sense of sympathy was triggered, even though they have a rational and emotional reason to spare this person's life now, they would rather double down on dehumanizing them, even though they have that information. So not only are they dehumanizing out of ignorance, they are knowingly and willfully choosing to do it, even though they have the contrary information. That's hilarious. And also evil. Moving on.
Okay, Woodward argues that Sniper Elite 5 takes a step forward from that idea by arming players with raw personal details about the Nazis they're targeting that could sway them away from pulling the trigger. I'm going to be super clear about this next bit because it's important. Don't humanize Nazis in your gratuitously violent action game, ever.
Um, except that they were human, and therefore any decision to actively refuse to humanize them is counterfactual, if not extremely questionable in the logical abstract. I.e., you are admitting that someone is in a category, and then you are coming up with reasons post hoc as to why they should be excluded from that category that they rightfully belong in. They belong in the category of human, but it's inconvenient to me that they're in the category of human. So I'm going to make up some bullshit to explain why they shouldn't be in the category of human anymore. Which, funnily enough, and this is once again why I both find this person detestable and also want to laugh at them, the thing that made the Nazis bad, okay, which they are bad, okay, but that's neither here nor there. The thing that made the Nazis bad, okay, is that they dehumanized a bunch of people and killed people en masse. So our response to these people who are bad primarily because they dehumanize people and kill them en masse is we're going to dehumanize them and kill them en masse. Do you see how that doesn't solve the problem? It's it it's like that one episode of The Great Divide, that one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender, The Great Divide. We brought food in because we assumed that the Ganjins would assume that we would bring food in and decide to bring food in themselves. So given that we knew that they would assume we would bring food in and decide to bring food in themselves, we decided, since everyone's going to bring food in anyway, we might as well bring food in. Even though we all know and agree that bringing food into this canyon will kill us all. And then everyone is doing the thing they all collectively know is a bad thing. Derp. Moving on.
Uh, uh, it's mind-boggling that this even needs to be said. Authenticity isn't the issue here. I'm not suggesting that we should overlook the reality that people were conscripted into Adolf Hitler's service and the complexities that play out at the individual level as a result. But that's a time and a place for such contradictions, and the video game series whose core focus graphically murdered tons of Nazis ain't it.
Okay, so here's another question. Again, given that under normal circumstances you are fine with this mechanic because it allows for morality to carry over into the video game space, why would you rather an indiscriminate Nazi murder simulator than a Nazi murder simulator that gives you the appropriate historical context? Because under normal circumstances, games that do things like give you deeper lore or more knowledge about your enemy or allows you to empathize with your enemy, those would normally be considered good things and would actually be the kind of thing you would get awards for. But because it's Nazis, you would rather not have it. Not because it's inaccurate, which you fully know and acknowledge that it's not inaccurate to do that. You would just rather it not happen because you want to kill Nazis. And let's do away with the euphemism and the special pleading, shall we? You want to kill a certain kind of person who you've earmarked as non-human, even though you know that it's not accurate and that your principles would lean the other way if it were literally any other kind of human. And that is why you are fucking terrifying. Because I genuinely don't know if you were faced with a real life Nazi or even someone you assumed in the abstract to be a real life Nazi, would you be able to justify in your own head pulling the trigger on them without a second thought? Because I'm beginning to think the answer to that question is yes. And it fucking terrifies me.
Okay.
Moving on.
The irksome addition of non-lethal approaches to combat is awful enough, but Woodward's explanation is what really knocks me out. Woodward's explanation is what really knocks me out. There was intent behind this decision, even if it was born out of some misguided desire to give players more options. Context matters. The context here puts rebellion in the awkward position of making a not all Nazis argument. No, I think that's your inference of something.
Well, yes, but also, I hate to break it to you, my dear, but and this may be controversial of me to say, but as we just outlined with several examples, not all Nazis wanted to be doing what they were doing. Not all Nazis even engaged in the violent, evil shit that the Nazis are known for. Some people were just the like desk bureaucrats. Some people's job was to sit behind a desk and thumb through files all day long. I.e., there are some people who were Nazis, i.e., who worked for the party, who never killed anyone, never sought out to kill anyone, never turned in anyone, never did any of that. There are some Nazis who all they did was sit behind a desk and thumb through some files all day. That doesn't change the fact that the Nazi Party in general did all those terrible things, and that certainly should be noteworthy. But your assumption was that saying not all Nazis was some moral indictment. Well, unfortunately for you, dear, A, even the worst Nazis were still human, and therefore still worthy of human rational consideration. And B, there are actually some Nazis who didn't do a damn thing, and therefore shouldn't be treated like the people who fired up the gas chambers every 5 minutes and laughed while they did it. Which there were some of those. There were some people who were morally repugnant assholes from the word go until the word stop. But we shouldn't treat Sven over there, whose job it was to mainly do the paperwork all day long every day, like we treat Hans, who laughed while he turned on the gas chamber every day. These are not morally equivalent states, do you see? Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What happens when this game folds into the social fabric of our messed up society where fascism is already on the rise? Okay, it's not.
No, it really, really, really isn't, my dear. What's on the rise are populism and libertarianism on both sides of the political spectrum. Whether it's ANCAPs or ANCOMs, they both are after some kind of anarchy. Now, granted, I would say anarchy in general isn't sustainable, and that's why I consider myself more of a classical liberal stroke social democrat stroke libertarian. But that's neither here nor there. The number of people who genuinely, for real, advocate for anything that could be reasonably described as fascism is minimal to negligible, and also almost all of them are childish, hipsterish laughingstocks. Like, the closest thing to a genuine fascist you have in this day and age is Richard Spencer or John Francois Gary P. And there are a bunch of rich, spoiled dude bros who get laughed out of basically every situation they're in because they're cartoonishly stupid wannabe supervillains. Like, these are the kind of people who Draken, Doofenshmirtz, Dr. Evil, and Jack Spicer would laugh out of the room for being incompetent morons. And that's basically the worst that humanity has to offer, at least in the West at the moment. Now, there's an argument to be made for some segments of the other side of this argument who think that, for example, capitalism is just softcore fascism, and so in order to be effectively anti-fascistic, you have to be opposed to capitalism and be an anarcho-communist. There's an argument to be made for those people acting awfully fascist in their mannerisms and behavior, but I doubt you would be one of the ones that would be willing to have that conversation. But in terms of prominent self-identifying fascists who act or people who actively espouse fascist frameworks, no. The ones that do exist are childish dickheaded laughingstocks, as well they should be. And the people who you want to call fascists are usually just populist libertarians of some description or other. And populism and libertarianism have sweet butt fuck all to do with fascism. Anyway, moving on.
Right. I share the hidden object gurus' concerns about what bigoted content creators will do with Sniper Elite 5's baked-in freedom to decide what Nazis are good and which Nazis are bad. Do you think it'll be long before someone flips the good-bad metric on its head and makes a video focusing on saving the ones who possess the more detestable backgrounds?
Only if you assume your political opponents are somehow non-human. Which, again, I hate to break it to you, my dear, but every example of the species known as Homo sapien on this planet are human. Like, that there is not a single example of a biological human entity who is not human. Not one. So dehumanizing them is illogical, probably immoral, and if nothing else, a categorical factual error that might lead to immorality or illogic if you allow it to muddy up your philosophical framework. Because when you build a philosophical framework on something you know to be false by your own admission, you're kind of gonna end up fucking everything up in your calculations. It's kind of like when you use math that you know is the wrong answer, even though you do know it's the wrong answer, you're probably not going to get the calculations right of whatever you happen to be building with this mathematics. Moving on.
Right. I'm so disappointed at the lack of foresight here. As someone who has been with Sniper Elites every step toward the compellingly open-ended sandbox it is today, the non-lethal twist and the reason for its inclusion is a deal-breaker. It's a shame, and Rebellion should be ashamed for ceding every inch of a moral high ground to disgusting bigots. Okay, fuck you.
Sweetheart, you are advocating for a certain kind of human to be dehumanized on purpose, even though you know consciously that they are actually human. Which, again, I hate to break it to you, is exactly what the Nazis did and exactly why they are so universally detestable. The reason why Nazis are universally detestable is because they made a habit of consciously and knowingly dehumanizing people they knew to be human. They did it with Jews, they did it with gypsies, homosexuals. They did it with all of the people that they would refer to as the Untermensch, and all you've done is you've swapped the Nazi for the Untermensch, and you think you have the moral high ground. I hate to break it to you, my dear, but no matter how awful the Nazis were, they were still human. And while I'm fine with a game that doesn't play the trolley problem card where it lies and make that information aware or make that information known to you, normally, under most normal circumstances, adding layers of philosophical complexity or moral ambiguity to games is something that especially pseudo-intellectual academic types like you tend to praise. And so I have to ask, what's the difference between this game and literally every other game that takes something morally uncomplicated and adds these layers to it? And that's because you don't want to have to consciously deal with the fact that whether you like it or not, Nazis are just as human as you. They may not be as moral as you, they may not be as ethically defensible as you, but they are every bit as human as you, and therefore still require rational cognition to make the choice to kill or not. Especially if you are the type of person who does make a moral equivalence between video games and real life, which is exactly what you're doing here. There's no reason whatsoever that you would find this morally detestable if you didn't draw a parallel between fictional digitally constructed Nazis with false backstories and real world Nazis that might also be human, question mark. And that to me is more telling on you than telling on the game developer. The fact that not only are you not going to avail yourself of this kind of gameplay, but you consider it to be a moral flaw for the game designer to offer anyone else that option either, because you just want a group of people you can kill indiscriminately and not worry your pretty little ethical conscience about it. Well, I'm sorry, but no matter which kind of person you're trying to kill indiscriminately, you probably should have to think about it if you're going to think about it at all. Or you can go with the it's just a game defense, in which case there's nothing wrong with the game being more mature in its execution logically. Now, is there? Unless you want to draw a moral complaint. Hey, yeah, moving on.
Simply for the sake of time, and also I'm tired and I don't want to deal with more stupid tonight.
Yep.
We're going to move on to something a little more happier, I guess. That really depends. Because I did like one quick watch of this, and I thought, it was interesting. You know, maybe we could talk about it at some point. I don't know if it's going to be happy or not. Like, it's going to make us feel better or not. So, it's a Netflix thing, and I'm sure everyone here, as we've covered Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix can be hit or miss. Honestly, this looks more like a hit to me than a miss, but
I think if we, because again, I only watched like once weeks ago because it came out September 13th, and it is the 25th today, so that's a little over 2 weeks now.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a school for good and evil. Although the Academy for Good and Evil sounds a lot better, in my opinion. Yeah.
Or maybe even something like Archetype Academy or something. That would be cool.
Nah, that's a bit too modern.
Maybe. Yeah.
I get where you're going.
Anyway.
I get where you're going with, but again, Archetype Academy, it just sounds a little bit too modern, so to speak. And this seems like an old thing.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be ancient insofar as like this is where fairy tales come from and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're gonna look through this. I'm just curious whether or not actually analyzing it is gonna get me to either like it or not. Because initial reaction, I thought it was okay.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of reaction of I could see enjoying this.
Right. Shall we?
Poison apple.
I see what you did there. I actually okay. Out of all like puns, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
I guess you could technically call it a pun. That's actually one of the ones I can respect.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually intelligent. No offense.
Because I almost went just standard banana. I'm like, you know what? No, there's a very obvious fruit object that goes here. So yeah, poison apple.
Um. All right. Shall we?
Poison apple.
Poison apple.
Every so often, a very lucky candidate from the outside is selected for admission to this hallowed institution.
It's happening. This is it. This is real.
Okay.
I'm gonna be really annoyed and really petty for a second here. Why does this look visually more interesting than Sandman?
See, I knew you were gonna go there. I just knew it.
Like I don't bear this show any ill will. I mean, there were a lot of Netflix shows before Sandman that also look better than Sandman, like Umbrella Academy and Chilling Adventures of Sabrina also look better than Sandman. But my issue is, I'm betting that this show doesn't have nearly the budget of Sandman. So the question then becomes, if you can make something look this good without the budget, then where the fuck did the budget go on Sandman?
Okay, so I just did a quick look through because I think it is going to mention this, but it is based off a series of books, which is The School of Good and Evil. Or no, the School for Good and Evil. My bad.
Yeah. This simultaneously doesn't surprise me because it does seem like it seems like the kind of concept that would have been popular like a decade ago when all the YA adaptations were happening, like Hunger Games, Divergence.
Okay, let me. Because I was going to read the synopsis, but let me move it back. Okay, so 6 books in total. So what do you call that? What's the word? Excel? Is it?
Sextology, I think.
Let's see. Yeah, so 6 books. Well, okay, so 2 trilogies, basically.
Yeah.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a series of books. Let's just say that then.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one came out in 2013, so nearly 10 years ago, and the last one was released 2020.
Which means that this franchise had enough of a fan base to keep it going for six books, which good for you. Yeah, author of School for Good and Evil.
That's kind of impressive that the first trilogy was released in just 3 years.
Yeah, some authors are workhorses. Now, I don't know if that relates to the quality of the writing, because some people push out books too quickly and it results in bad books. But.
The second trilogy was released in 2017, 2019, and 2020.
So 2 years per book.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. But anything for the first 20 seconds, I don't really have anything else to say, honestly.
Yeah, it looks good. It looks better than freaking Sandman, which bothers me. But that's not here today. I'm not gonna blame this show for Sandman being shit, but it still bothers me. Anyway, Poison Apple.
Poison Apple.
We've been expecting you. The School for Good and Evil, where the true story behind every great fairy tale begins. The school for good trains the heroes. The school for evil, the villains.
You're trying to tell me that's no.
It's a very good thing that I am not in this universe, because I would be acing the school for evil so hard.
I feel like I would be in the middle, to be honest.
Oh, you would be in the school for heroes.
That'd be a terrible one, though.
Yeah, but that's what the training is for.
To be fair, I would try to get myself out of there just because.
You shouldn't. You
Right.
really shouldn't.
Okay, well, dude, heroes usually lead pretty crappy lives.
I mean, this is true.
2, I just personally do not want the kind of power that these heroes would want, which are fairy tale heroes, and the responsibility entailed with that.
Well, this is the funny thing, and this is why I feel bad. I kind of feel bad for the hero school, because fairy tale heroes never get cool powers. Fairy tale villains, on the other hand, get the best powers.
Yeah, actually, you're right on that, huh? Although I will say this does remind me a bit of. You sound weird, but I was around during like the craze that had happened, like those high school fantasy shows, and
Yeah, like I said, when the YA craze was going on, when it was like
no. Like Monster High, Ever After High, those.
it reminds me more of something like Legacies or Grimm or something like that.
Okay, fair enough. I've seen that stuff, sort of. What I mean is like the setup kind of reminds me of like Ever After High.
I don't know if anyone else has watched the show Legacies. It's a spin-off, I think, of Vampire Diaries.
And the original.
Yeah, and the originals. But this reminds me a lot of Legacies, actually. It's why I'm not surprised. It's why I'm not surprised it was a YA novel or a YA novel series, because this feels very much like what was that, like, fantasy centric YA movie? Beautiful Creatures, the one that was set in like Louisiana.
Never. I saw the trailer for it. Didn't interest me. So.
I watched it just because, I mean, it has magic in it, so I'm easy sell.
Wow, that.
I don't hate it. It's not good by any stretch of the imagination. It struggles with accuracy points, which bothers me. But
okay.
it's more interesting. It's more interesting than Harry Potter. I'll give it that.
Dude, you can say that about like a dozen.
that is a bit, yeah, no, that is a very low bar. I'm just saying that, like.
So I have the synopsis here. Best friends Sophie and Agatha find themselves on opposing sides of an epic battle when they're swept away into an enchanted school where inspiring heroes and villains are trained to protect the balance between good and evil.
Of course, the villain's name is Agatha. That is glorious. That is such. It's funny because, of course, Agatha Harkness, but also because Agatha is such a old school witch name.
How do you know she's not in the hero school?
Because Sophie is such a princess name, it makes me cry.
Fair enough. Also, the director is Paul Feig.
Well, there goes some of my hype for this.
I mean, I've only seen like one movie of his, which is Spy. I'm aware that he did the 2016 one, 2016 Ghostbusters movie.
Why, Paul? Why is he still getting work?
I mean, Spy was funny to me, at least.
I mean, yeah, but he's good. He's good basically at rom-coms, and that's about it.
The Heat Bridesmaids. Also, a 2019 movie called Last Christmas.
Yeah, they're all rom-coms. That's what I mean. Why someone tried to let him go from rom-coms to Ghostbusters remake, I'll never know, but someone did. I think Amy Pascal takes the heat for that one.
Right. Anyway, shall we poison apple?
We shall poison the apple.
Poison apple. The poison apple just sounds better than not poison the apple.
No, I was being flippant because it's like, yeah, poison the apple. Poison apple.
Trying to tell me that Snow White and Cinderella and Jack and the Beanstalk were real.
Our graduates live the very real events, which become the stories. That change the world.
Is there a...
Okay, so see, that's kind of why that what was said, which is Lawrence Fishburne in this, by the way. So pretty good number, pretty good cast actually.
I mean, yeah, damn, good for you, show. You got Lawrence Fishburne.
But that definition of how the school works and stuff, yeah, that's why I thought Ever After High, kind of.
Yeah.
And so that kind of makes me wonder if they're going to introduce the concept of like trying to break out of the mold, cause a little like.
I mean, maybe some villains that want to be heroes, some villains or some heroes that want to be villains. Although, I imagine there's going to be a lot more heat for the heroes who cross over to the villain side than there is villains who want to cross over to the heroes. Because I don't think they would have so much a problem with villains who try to be heroes, but heroes who actively choose to be villains,
or those that don't want to be neither, don't want to participate in this. That would I be finding interesting.
I don't think this show is that smart.
Oh well, that's actually no. I think it's a movie. It's a movie.
Oh well, yeah. I don't think this movie is that smart.
It's
I don't think they're even gonna bring up the option of just being neither. I think it's gonna be some villains want to try to be heroes thing.
Right.
And my guess is Sophie and Agatha are going to be at the center of it. Sophie is going to try to save Agatha for being a villain. Agatha is going to try to stay friends with Sophie despite being a villain, and they're going to upend the order because that's how YA novels work.
I don't think you remember the trailer much, do you?
What did I say that contradicted that?
Let's watch and find out. Poison apple.
Poison apple. Yeah.
That I can chase with you. This is all I've ever wanted, Aggie. I can't settle for an ordinary life. Not as it seems the universe we knew.
But we don't belong here.
Oh dear. You must be lost.
That is an
Okay, so it looks like Agatha's in the hero thing, and Sophie's in the villain thing.
Okay, someone has made a clerical error.
Or that's the point.
I mean, yes, but also, if I were in charge of the school, I would be asking some questions.
I mean, to be fair, your name doesn't sound like evil per se. It just sounds very like heroic.
No. It sounds aristocratic, and villains are more often aristocratic than heroes.
Okay.
Heroes are usually the forgotten, put upon farm boys and shit.
Don't look at me, motherfucker. That ain't me.
No. You're more the 90s-esque or 80s-esque urban hero than you are the
Yes.
than you are
That's why.
the fairy tale hero, but you're
That's
still a freaking cinnamon roll.
That's why I don't think I would work in this kind of setting.
I mean there are working class heroes like the huntsman from.
But they're classic heroes. They're meant to be living the lives of the fairy tales, like grim fairy tales and stuff like that. Those stories.
I mean, like there's the woodsman from Red Riding Hood, the one that cuts the wolf open. I could see you doing that.
Dude, I don't think I would work well in this setting.
I would have a lot of fun in the villain school.
Also, I'm too gray. I'm not like a white knight.
To be fair, in the actual fairy tales, hardly anyone was.
Fair enough.
Either.
I actually probably should sit down and read those at some point.
Yeah, like old German or old Russian fairy tales, they're fucked up. They are fucked beyond reason. Anyway. Because Mab was having fun that day.
Shall we?
Yeah. Poison apple.
Poison apple.
Understatement.
Future heroes and villains.
The time has come for you to admit which side you're on.
I'm tired of being pathetic little Sophie.
You can be more than you ever dreamed.
Yeah, so I kind of figured that's what they were going to do, and yeah, once you were actually wrong, Don. How's that taste?
I mean, I'm not sure how wrong I was, because it seems like she starts on the hero side, and then, like that girl or that woman just said, admit which side you're on, and then she switches to villain side.
I don't know. Honestly, this trailer isn't like. The weird thing is, I don't think the timeline of the trailer makes sense.
No, because they're showing stuff out of order, I'm sure, but.
No, true, and that's not. But like, the thing with trailers, and again, I've edited trailers myself, is that you try to keep a consistent timeline, even if you're using scenes out of order.
Yeah, to at least give the impression that the story is progressing in a sensible manner.
Yeah, so it feels a bit off. Like it's not too bad, but it's somewhat noticeable if you're looking for it.
It's Netflix being Netflix again.
I disagree because like I've watched other Netflix trailers and they're not bad.
It seems like as time goes by, Netflix is getting worse. It's why Chilling Adventures of Sabrina looks better than Sandman for example, or Umbrella Academy looks better than Sandman because
everyone take a drink every time Dawn bitches about Netflix's Sandman.
I don't want to do to you what Ezra Miller did to that one.
Like it's soda, so I'm fine.
Yeah, but you might still die from, I don't know, caffeine exposure or something.
Hold on.
First of all, what kind of soda is it?
Citrus drop.
Ah.
Looking.
Yeah, you might be overexposed to vitamin C or something.
47 grams of sugar.
Yeah, so you'll die of a sugar high induced heart attack.
To be fair, I drank a lot of water earlier, so.
Uh-huh.
Weird how it doesn't say caffeine on it. Oh. Okay. Anyway, shall we?
Poison apple.
Poison apple.
Dreamed you could be. You'll not just be the fairest of them all. You'll be the strongest.
The rules at this school must be obeyed.
line between good and evil will be broken. So yeah, I mean, it's not really doing anything technically new per se from what we're seeing in the trailer.
Yeah, no, it's an old story. Good person doesn't want to be good, evil person doesn't want to be evil, etc.
I mean, Megamind comes to mind.
I mean, Megamind or
Shrek.
Shrek, yeah.
I mean, does that count? Does that count? Does Shrek count?
I mean, ogres are supposed to by default be evil, as the fairy godmother said in Shrek 2. Ogres don't get happily ever after.
It was an amazing sequel, by the way.
Yeah, and Jennifer Walters, who plays the fairy godmother, did an amazing job. Also, her rendition of "Holding Out for a Hero" is probably my favorite version.
Right. Again, Ever After High was, although it touched on really deep themes of destiny and defiance of fate.
Yeah.
And other things. It was really interesting. I think it was somewhat limited by being labeled as a kid's product. Or more so, not even that. More so, it was trying to sell toys. You know, like dolls and stuff. So
yeah,
limited, yeah, limited audience and all. So. Trying to think of anything else related to that idea of not wanting to be the roles. Make money out for you.
Descendants.
I will say this looks better than Descendants.
Oh yeah, at least the money is there. They're not skipping on the money.
Right.
Though I will say I have a soft spot at least for the first Descendants movie.
No, the first Descendants is not a bad one. I remember watching that too.
The sequel, granted, I still think that Disney Channel is slipping the longer it exists, because comparing Descendants, for example, to the Disney Channel original movie that was big when I was a kid, which was High School Musical, I think the production values on High School Musical were better.
Also, Avalon High, if you remember that one. If we're talking,
yeah, that one too.
High school fantasy story. Comparing that to Descendants.
Yeah, all the jocks were knights of the Round Table or some shit.
Yeah, it was it was honestly, it wasn't a bad movie actually. I really liked it. So it's been a while since I've seen it, so.
Yeah, but there's a lot of you're predestined to be good, you're predestined to be evil. Well, I like the other side better, switch places type stories. So
it's not. I wouldn't say it's I don't think it's existed for super long per se.
But it's existed long enough to be a trope, I think, or at least a existing motif.
Yeah, I would say motif. A trope itself, I think, within that kind of story.
Yeah, a lot of attempts to subvert classic fairy tales or whatever. So.
Yeah.
Even they kind of did it also with if you remember Sky High, they kind of did it with War and Peace.
Yeah. Anyway, Poison Apple.
Poisoned Apple.
Dangerous evil is here. We have to protect Sophie.
If Sophie becomes evil, none of us will survive.
I'm your best friend. Evil is controlling you.
Again, this is why I'm pretty sure she starts out on the hero side and gets drawn into the villain side.
Right.
And everyone is freaking the fuck out because she's supposed to be the greatest hero ever. If she turns evil, we're all fucked.
I do feel that's a bit. Okay, well, I'm not as interested as I was when I first saw this. Maybe because I didn't watch this last part. I kind of skimmed through the trailer, I'm not gonna lie.
Anyway, Poisoned Apple.
Yeah.
I thought fairies were supposed to be nice.
Even in the context of like Disney fairy tales, have you never heard of Maleficent?
Was she a fairy?
Yes, she was.
Oh,
And quite frankly, Stefan and Stefan is just lucky that it was Maleficent that showed up, not Mab. Because that entire kingdom wouldn't have survived.
yeah. I do wish they kind of could add a little more. Honestly, I feel like if they made it a series.
Yeah, it really feels like this feels less like a movie and more like the pilot to a series.
Yeah.
Why they chose to make it, and given that there's six books to pull from, they could have easily made it a series. I don't know why they didn't.
Actually, speaking of series, I don't know if I should bring it up now, but there was a teaser for the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus coming out.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it. I don't really have anything because it was very much a teaser in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
I mean, it showed Camp Half Blood and the look. It looked like how I kind of pictured Camp Half Blood in the books when I would read them growing up.
I mean, I don't have much investment in the Percy Jackson series, but I'm sure whenever there's an actual full trailer released, we'll cover it in November or something. So
I don't know when the full trailer will be coming out because it happened during D23. So,
but anyway, all of that will be dealt with in November.
Yeah.
After we have paid our dues.
Right. Yeah, and we got some stuff planned. I'm not gonna really don't want to like spoil it yet because we kind of want some surprises for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, the School for Good and Evil. I mean, concept-wise, it's interesting. I always like those kind of ideas. It does look a little bit simplified for my liking.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of like these modern day spins or takes off of fairy tales, I really wish someone would do an adaptation of a book series that I was really fond of in high school, which is called The Grimm Legacy. It's a story about basically imagine a lending library but for antique objects, and then in their VIP special collections they have actual magical objects from fairy tales. That's sort of the long and short of Grimm Legacy, and I really loved it when I read it. And no one has ever done an adaptation of Grimm Legacy. And you would think with all of these, fairy tale adaptations here, subversive fairy tale adaptations there, yada yada yada, you would think someone would do an adaptation of Grimm Legacy, but nobody has yet. Now, granted, I don't think I want it done now because quality is not a thing in Hollywood right now.
Right.
But someday I want someone who knows what they. Maybe Del Toro can do an adaptation of Grimm Legacy. I wouldn't mind that. There's also a sequel called The Wells Bank Quest and the Poe Conservatory that's essentially the same thing, but instead of objects of fairy tales, it's objects from science fiction and objects from horror fiction that all have various magical abilities. And I really love that series. Anyway, that's for 20 years when Hollywood gets its shit back together and actually are willing to do a quality adaptation of shit.
Yeah. Anyway, I gotta actually hit the bed because I've been up since like 7 in the morning. Maybe earlier. I can't really remember. Anyway.
Yeah. You go to sleep, but first outro.
So yeah, with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
shalom. Now fuck off and come back in October when things get fun.